Thank you.
Are you well hydrated?
Yes, I am. Okay. I wondered why. Yeah, there was that slow, there that, should we say, senior moment. Yes.
You get it now.
Now, that notwithstanding, I have got it. Yes.
You've got it.
That is
very
yes.
good. Good. Very,
and how
very
are you, Eric?
Good. I'm very well, thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you.
Glad to be alive and to be well.
Nduwoko, how are you?
Fine, thank you, CT. How are you doing this morning?
This morning, and even yesterday morning, and the morning before that, I was well.
So there've been a trio of good mornings.
It has been excellent mornings.
Fantastic.
And I am grateful to the Almighty for such a blessing.
Voila.
Yes.
You're well, Eric?
Yes.
Good.
Just like I told CT.
No, but everybody, you have to hear for yourself how you're feeling to somebody else may not be how you're feeling to the other person. Isn't it?
Yeah, when CT and I spoke, what we agreed on was universal. We are all well.
You see? Okay. So once you say I shouldn't ask again, Abi? Understood.
Are you well?
Sorry?
Are you well? Okay, good. So, welcome to the show. Happy Monday. We hope that you're going to have a lovely week. Today, we'll have a couple of conversations. Well, we know that COVID-19 is still spreading in the community. We are hearing and we are seeing reports of it appears like there's a variant in this country. Or it could just be, people just reacting. So we don't know yet. We know that, yes, there were some variants that have been detected in Taita Taveta. We don't know how far that information has gone. But we know that there's COVID. We're in the third wave, in the midst of a third wave, and it is really, really affecting people. People who have tested positive, completely asymptomatic. Some have tested positive. They have mild symptoms. Some have tested positive, and they have quickly degenerated into serious symptoms and are seeking hospitalization. Then hospitals apparently are getting full. When you have over 100 people hospitalized in ICU with COVID, that is a high number.
It is.
It is a high number, but you see, what we need to perhaps mention is something that we will be talking about when we look at the headlines. And this is with regards to the supposedly empty coffers that Treasury is running on. One of the things that the Ministry of Health is supposed to do in such a situation is to have surveillance.
Right.
Now, surveillance requires money.
Right.
And without that money, it is impossible for what is necessary to be done. And in the absence of that surveillance, you cannot know whether we have a variant or not. Or if we do have a variant, what that variant is likely to be. But if we go by countries who have had surges of this wave of COVID-19, each of those countries have come out with a variant of their own. Whether they're talking about Brazil, whether they're talking about the UK, whether they're talking about South Africa, they have come out with a variant of their own. Yes. So the absence is not due to it's not being there. It is due to a lack of understanding that has been brought about by the deficiencies in our surveillance system.
It's true. So a couple of months ago actually, is when there were talks of now these variant strains that were then found in Taita Taveta and then Isiolo. But in terms of reports of further investigations having been done, I don't think any of those have yet been made public. But what we were told is that they would look at them, and the number then was 6. I believe it was 6 different ones that they had been able to pinpoint. But in terms of how dangerous they were, we have not been given further information about that. Now, what you're saying could lend to that it's possible that just time and resources have not been made available to find out exactly what is going on. And so until and unless we're given that information, for us to then be able to be told what exactly is happening here, it would be difficult. So if we look at the stories that are being covered, I guess we'll look into those into more detail. Why COVID deaths are spiraling in the country. It's spreading. A more lethal coronavirus strain spreading and doing so silently is what we are being told right now. Kenya appears to be literally shooting in the dark in its battle against COVID-19 after it emerged that an unknown new coronavirus strain is behind the current spike in infections and deaths. Health experts said yesterday that the mysterious, more aggressive and lethal variant is silently spreading in communities, but efforts to discover and combat it have been hit by lack of funding. All right, so we'll look into that story a little bit later. But every day for the last 1 week, save Monday last week, we recorded 1,000+ cases. Last week, Thursday, saw the highest number of cases recorded in Kenya in a single day. And we're likely to get a little bit higher than that. We have folks like Professor Munzala telling us that, the rising numbers are due to community transmission, and saying he's saying no to this, and that the spread is attributed to unknown factors that need further investigation. So right now, we really don't know why it's spreading so quickly. We don't know why we're getting such high numbers, but it needs more science, is what we're looking at. So let's look quickly at the global numbers. 123,855,540 cases is where the world is at right now. And still looking at some high numbers in some countries that have led to further lockdowns. France and Poland are some of the new countries to increase or rather impose new lockdown measures. Some 21 million people in France will be affected, and Poland's shops and hotels are shut nationwide. So there are some countries who are still taking the brunt of this, being hard hit. Countries like Ireland, Great Britain, still under semi-lockdown and not being able to move as much as they'd like. Wales did open up a couple of weeks ago, schools having been reopened, people going back to work. But then, of course, there's an eye out to see if this will actually hold. So we're still looking at high numbers around the world. We're still looking at some countries that are taking it really, really heavy. Again, Brazil is still up there. And now with a cocktail of vaccines available in the United States, some Americans are deciding to be choosy about which vaccine they will take. The Moderna and AstraZeneca vaccines are common. The Johnson & Johnson vaccine in the US, for some reason, not so much. So they have the option. And
so how many are they dealing with in America?
How many vaccines do they have at the moment?
Yes.
Well, the three that they're dealing with: Moderna, AstraZeneca, and Johnson & Johnson.
Pfizer?
Yes.
It's
they
there.
are.
But these are the three major ones that everybody's going for. But the Pfizer one is there. It's available.
Oh.
Yeah.
I thought
But for some reason
AstraZeneca was not big in the States.
Oh, apparently.
Let's say it has a presence. You would expect, given where the strength that Pfizer has in the States, they do have. Remember, the problem with the vaccines and the availability in the States is this. Counties, no, they're not called counties, they're called states. States decide what it is that they want to use. So, if one state determines that AstraZeneca is what they're going to prefer, it will be that. If others prefer this, remember, the science is available, and all these big pharmaceutical companies do have a presence in the US. Yes. So it's a question of the preference that one has.
Okay. Because I'm actually, the reason why I was asking about AstraZeneca is the news that I'd seen, and I'm seeing it still that way, is that the Food and Drug Administration has not yet approved AstraZeneca. This is
what level of approval are we speaking of? Or have they just written approved?
They have not approved AstraZeneca for use in the US.
Even for emergency purposes?
But US President Joe Biden's North American neighbors, that's Canada and Mexico, have been pushing for more supply to immunize their populations quicker.
Since we're talking about approvals, maybe we need to talk about a little more. Remember, very many of these vaccines were approved for emergency use. Okay?
Yeah.
What that means is that, yes, you can use it because we are in an emergency, but tests are still ongoing. Yes, it isn't as though it has been given a clean bill of health for you to just test it. And that is part of the reason why a country like Israel, as part of their negotiation when they were buying it, they used the data that will be collected when during the process of their vaccinating their citizens is collected. that was part of their beginning chip when they were bringing in the vaccines that they wanted to use. So all these vaccines, as we talk about, if you look at the way the approvals have been framed, it is for emergency use. Yes.
Yep, but when it comes to AstraZeneca, FDA, not yet. That's all the news. Higher. In Europe is starting to roll out again AstraZeneca.
Yeah, some countries have then said, okay, we're going to go ahead with this, regardless of the news that we're seeing coming out of some countries that have put a ban on it. Other countries are saying, well, it's all right, we're just going to continue with this. Then again, taking the science into consideration that it is not necessarily... So Germany, France, Italy, Spain, they'll restart vaccinations after the regulator that they had put in to do these preliminary investigations has said that it is safe. So they're saying, all right, since we tasked you with this job to tell us what's going on with this, and you've come back and told us that everything is okay, you've given it the thumbs up, then we'll start again. And those are meant to start today, actually, being Monday. So
Okay.
we'll see what that looks like.
All right. So keep it right here for headlines coming up shortly. First, we want to take a look at what's happening in terms of the weather in the country and around the world. And we hear today's proverb from CT Muga. The live stream is up, SpiceFM KE, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Say hello. We'll be saying hello to you shortly. Good morning.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life. Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah.
You're listening to Spice FM. Spice FM.
Hey, it's getting hot in here. The media has greatly contributed to the moral rot that we experience in this country.
I remember a senior politician telling me, point blank, nobody steals in the field, it's stolen in the granary. So my friend, if you're going to win an election, jipange kwa granary.
I think we are suffering from Stockholm Syndrome. Our violator and abuser is also our redeemer in our mind.
The whole political class, the whole political institution is rotten. It is based on
Spice FM. Spice up your life.
All right, so we're looking at partly cloudy conditions in Nairobi this morning. We'll see highs of 26 and lows of 17. Nyeri at 17 degrees, partly cloudy as well. We'll see highs of 26. We're looking at Nakuru, also the same, highs of 26 today, partly cloudy conditions through most parts of the morning. Eldoret at 13 this morning is quite chilly. We'll go to highs of 21 and then lows of 14. Kisumu will see highs of 26 today, currently 20 and partly cloudy. Kakamega as well, going to highs of 27. And in Mombasa today, we'll see highs of 32 as well in Malindi. Kampala at 21, we'll go to highs of 28 today. We'll see highs of 32 in Dar es Salaam in Tanzania, and we'll see highs of 26 in Johannesburg. Coming into Monday, cloudy skies in Lagos, going to highs of 32 today. Kinshasa also, chance of rain later with highs of 33. And we'll look at the rest of the cities in the world and what the weather looks like this Monday morning.
Spice and everything nice, everything nice.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
All right, 7 minutes after 6 CT. Today's proverb.
When a once beautiful piece of cloth turns to rags, no one remembers that it was woven by Ukwe master weavers.
Who are those Ukwe master weavers? Are they Rivertex?
Yes, Igbo.
So the Ukwe master weavers are
When
from
a beautiful piece of cloth turns to rags, no one remembers that it was once woven by Ukwe master weavers.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know, the early weavers didn't just weave from cotton. No. They weave from wool. They wove cloths from hairs, furs of other animals. When they were called masters, they did wonderful things with what was available to them. Yes, they did wonderful things with sisal. And it's a craft that was passed on from one generation to the other to the other. Remember, this is even in those early days, they had understood the concept of dyeing. So it wasn't as though the cloth or the material is just one color. No, it was a variety of beautiful colors.
Right.
Yes.
Right. The Ukwe master weavers. Sawa. Let's take a look at the headlines. The headline. So there's that big headline in the Nation today which says, exposed why COVID deaths are spiraling. With a surge in infections raising fears of the coronavirus pandemic overwhelming the health system, it's emerging that surveillance, which would have enabled experts to understand the virus, is hampered by lack of funds, and the country has no reagents to detect new variants. Meanwhile, hospitals in Nairobi are already facing ICU bed crisis. This is given coverage on page 4. It's a mishmash of all things that are happening right now. So now there's the Treasury continuing to walk on thin ice as national coffers run dry, growing expenditure demands that it cannot keep up with. The National Treasury Cabinet Secretary Ukur Yatani has refuted claims that the country is broke. Delays in disbursing funds to critical sectors of the economy tell a different story. From delays in disbursing the funds to counties, paying health workers, struggling to fund university student loans, now the Treasury has to grapple with finding resources to pacify MPs who refused to pass the supplementary budget until CDF is released. So all those things that you see are getting to a point where we are saying Kenya is in a tight spot and its coffers are running dry. Now, I am looking at this story. I've done paragraph 1, paragraph 2, paragraph 3, paragraph 4. We go to Kuriatani. We go to last government books as published in the Kenya Gazette, showing us that February 26, 2021, just 4 months to the end of the financial year, the government had collected 1.6 trillion against a target of 1.8 trillion, which is 200 billion shillings less. But we go on. I'm looking for the part where we now bring in the headline of why COVID deaths are spiraling. Treasury disclosed that ordinary revenue for the 6 months. Yatani attributes this. Government has since reversed the taxes on the COVID. Cash shortfall has seen Treasury raid the remaining. So far, CBK has wired a total of 14.8 billion. Kenya Pipeline Corporation. The government has also been falling behind. This story, which the headline is leading us to page 4. So the story is on page 6.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So there's a bit of confusion here.
Surely.
Actually, no. It's symptomatic of what we're discussing, isn't it?
Literally groping in the dark.
Jesus.
Right. So the story we're looking for on page 4 is actually on page 6.
So they're leading us to page 4 as a decoy.
Just like we're being told now that perhaps the coffers of our treasury is running dry. We've been in trouble for the longest possible time. What COVID has done is what it has done the world over. It has just shone a very, very bright light on issues that had existed prior to COVID. That's all it has done.
Yes.
Yes. If we are looking at what you're saying, and then we look at the headline and the star says, Jubilee borrowed 3.37 billion daily in 2020 report. The Controller of Budget says the government was loaned 1.23 trillion between December 30th, 2019 and December 30th, 2020. So, this is just following a long litany of stories of our borrowing and the debt. You throw this against the backdrop of the president himself admitting that we were losing, albeit through unsavory means, 2 billion shillings a day. So, really, when these stories come up, what do you think you're being told? Yes. It isn't as though we've suddenly become broke. No. We had set ourselves up to be in this position for the longest possible time. The chickens are only now
coming home to roost.
No, visibly coming home to roost in great measure. They've been coming home to roost for the longest time.
So let's look at this more lethal
So let's talk about the VADs.
Okay. So now, actually, on page 6, Kenya appears to be literally shooting in the dark in its battle against COVID-19 after it emerged that an unknown new coronavirus strain is behind the current spike in infections and deaths. All right. Health experts said yesterday that the mysterious, more aggressive and lethal variant is silently spreading in communities, but efforts to discover and combat it have been hit by lack of funding. According to Professor Munzala, as it is, we're blindly seeing the numbers. This is not just about Kenyans lowering their guards. We have been here before, but the numbers are scary. Only understanding the virus will make us act. We have to allocate money for surveillance. This is what he's saying. He is a member of the National COVID-19 Task Force. He warned of a possibility that Kenyans, including survivors of COVID-19, lacked the immunity to fight the new strain, hence the surge in infections and deaths. For the last 1 week, Kenya has been recording daily infections of above 1,000 cases with a positivity rate of 17.5%, almost 4 times the World Health Organization recommended level of 5%. The average daily rate has doubled, with last Friday recording the highest single-day count of 28, pointing to a deepening crisis. The surge in deaths and infections has raised fears of the pandemic overrunning the country's ill-equipped health system, with hospitals in the capital, Nairobi, already facing an ICU bed crisis. And again, he says, the priority now is to cope with the scourge in very sick patients needing emergency ICU care, as patients are forced to queue for ICU beds in Nairobi. Unless this is addressed urgently, we shall lose more lives. He dismissed claims that the rising numbers are due to community transmission and attributed the spread to unknown factors that need investigation. Kenya's fight against the virus has largely depended on donor funding, including the AstraZeneca vaccine that is being rolled out, and the new variant is likely to complicate matters for the president's administration that is reeling under a biting cash crunch. So there we have the story now put together.
So the surveillance, there was initial surveillance.
Yes,
wasn't
there was. That's how they found out this, lingering strain in some of the counties that they mentioned before. The surveillance was up and about.
How much resources really would be required to maintain that surveillance?
I don't know, but maybe CT can help out here, because you find out something like that. Because when we looked at that story first, CT, you had said something about finding this strain. Then you have to now actually go out. You have to get your samples, and it has to go under rigorous investigation for you to then find out what it reacts to. You're not going to be able to say it is prevalent until you're able to test more and more people and say, okay, this particular one we found in high numbers in certain areas. If you found 1 or 2, it doesn't really do anything for you in terms of percentage.
Part of, again, this problem is a perennial problem we've had within the Ministry of Health. Many such activities were funded. Some of it
externally.
Yes, they were funded externally, and there are people whose funding enabled and augmented NASCOP, NARC, and other government agencies to be able to carry out some of these functions as were needed. But they were funded. It wasn't government, Kenya. It wasn't just
externally funded. Yeah.
Yes, the majority of the funding was. Now, when funding was cut during the Trump era, it covered all areas. It isn't as though it selected certain areas and didn't affect them. The funding affected most of the work that was done. We had this discussion about blood donation in the country. Remember, it was part of the PEPFAR funding for HIV. So when funding in that particular area was cut down, was brought down, was reduced, it also meant that those services that had thrived under those fundings, in the case of blood donation services, that one literally came to a halt. It's now, we now read of staggered attempts to try and revive it. Now, surveillance is something that most people don't even know happens. But whenever you hear of a yearly report of the existing prevalence of diseases and what has been done, it has to do with the surveillance that takes place.
Right.
Yes, it's not a hit and miss. It has to be an ongoing process.
So what you have essentially is that you kind of have, it's like a dormant window running in the back. That
Yes.
It's just
It's
sitting
always
there.
running.
It's always running, and it's going to essentially pick up something that's different.
Yes.
So what you have with the virus that seems to have affected everybody, what you have is it's running and saying, okay, hold on. Are we seeing something different here? But in order to have that running constantly, you have to put resources behind it. And I think that's what Omuzala is saying here. That you can't just say we have a new variant, but you look at it today and then look at it a month later. You need to have constant resources behind it to make sure that it's being tested. You're seeing that it's showing up here and there.
Okay.
And that's what you need.
I get all that. what I'm wondering is, so how much resource is required to be put into this? And I'm asking that against the backdrop of things like the AstraZeneca vaccine,
Yes.
right? And Oxford and the collaboration between Oxford and Cambridge and all the others. There is a lot of research that's still ongoing within Cambridge about COVID-19.
Yes.
By the time we're detecting these variants in Taita Taveta and continuing, that means that there's some work that's happening. So it's not like we are operating at completely zero, right? So what have they been able to do so far? And what extra would they have required? And then are we saying that it's something that we would not be able to actually afford to do? Because I'm getting a feeling that it's actually something that can be funded.
It can
Even
be funded.
locally.
I'm sure it can be.
Okay.
And already there's some funding. There's effort that's been put to Cambridge to continue the surveillance.
Not just Cambridge. Remember, if anyone reports to a health facility, whatever took you there is documented.
Yeah.
That's data. All right? Now, it isn't that the data may not exist. It is how do you get this data? How do you collate this data so that you can sift and understand what it's telling you? Because data speaks to you. All right? If it is neonatal care, there are people who attend. Postnatal, all right? If people come with attendant conditions of whatever it is that people, this information speaks to you. But for it to be able to be collated so that it forms a body of information that can be utilized, that is now when you require the funding for someone to put it exists. How to put it together. And then there's now the deliberate effort to just go out beyond just people who attend hospital, because not everybody who's unwell is in hospital. But to go out and determine from the population of people who are out there, you're going to ask the question, how much does it cost? And I'm saying, I actually don't know. And why I don't know is this. If I look at organizations that have conducted this particular, who have been involved in this particular work, the funding isn't a great deal of work, because all you do, you're not seeking to cure anybody. You're not seeking to have a repeat attendant. You simply gather the information as you move along. That's all you do. So it's as an information gathering exercise. So that in and of itself, beyond employing people to gather that information, collating it, analyzing it, and then reporting, it is not a very costly affair. This is really the point I'm trying to make.
I don't know if the concern is that there's not enough money, but just that in terms of attention that's being paid to this and saying, because then they do go on to say that, look, if we don't pay attention to this now, even all this inoculation that's going on currently would be a waste of time, because you have a majority of the population sitting having not been vaccinated. You have the danger of the second or third variant in the community. What if people get infected right now? What you want to do is speed up the process of vaccination right now. Make sure that people have that first line of defense against the virus before you then even now start talking about second or third strains. What are we going to do? What are you going to do? I think this is the main question that's being asked here. So maybe resources here is now saying, just do it.
So it's also about time.
Yes, just do it right now, as opposed to waiting.
And then my question would be, so the people who had initially allocated their time to this, what is it that they are now doing? They shifted focus, went back to what they were used to do. This was like their kind of moonlighting. They went back to their day jobs. What exactly is happening? So
The organization that has been supporting the Kenyan government with this work for the longest time is Center for Disease Control and Development, CDC. They're the ones who've been doing this. And their efforts are normally captured in a surveillance report referred to as KAIS, Kenya AIDS Indicator Survey. And it's produced periodically. It gives you a very clear indication of the disease burden in communities, what is prevalent, what isn't. And it follows the same method. Now, the end result of all this surveillance should be now a response. When you've got this information, what do you do? Now, when we're talking about COVID, where the lapse comes in, because we are unable to do this thing effectively, we are unable to know specifically the strains that we're dealing with. And if we don't know the strains, we're unable to respond appropriately. Now, that is where now the problem comes in. So in the absence of this same, that's why I went back to it was funded. It was supported. Now, when you hear supported, the truth is, the bulk of the money that got into it was actually given to the government of Kenya.
External.
Yes. If this was reduced, then even the activities will be reduced. And remember what I said, The information that we may be seeking may actually exist in health facilities. But if you cannot gather this information and then also go out to the larger community to get more information, then you will not have credible.
It is not information.
No, it is not. It's
27
insufficient.
27 minutes to 7. Let's take another break. We want to see what's happening on the roads and then look at more headlines. Good morning.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life. 24/7 around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM.
Whenever I shop, I simply tap.
At the fuel station, I just tap.
After enjoying my meal, I simply tap.
Everywhere I go, I just tap.
Tap.
Tap. Kenyans have discovered the fast, easy, and safe contactless way to pay. You only have to tap using your ABSA debit or credit card.
Tap.
Tap. Apply for your contactless ABSA card today. Simply SMS the words tap and go to 22268 today. That's Africanacity. That's ABSA. Daily and transaction limits along with terms and conditions apply. ABSA Bank PLC is regulated by the Central Bank of Kenya.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah.
You're listening to Spice FM. Spice FM.
Hey, it's getting hot in here. The media has greatly contributed to the moral rot that we experience in this country.
I remember a senior politician telling me, point blank, nobody steals in the field, it's stolen in the granary. So my friend, if you're going to win an election, jipange kwa granary.
I think we are suffering from Stockholm syndrome. Our violator and abuser is also our redeemer in our mind.
The whole political class, the whole political institution.
Traffic.
All right, let's look at this Monday morning and see what it has in store for us. Coming off Mombasa Road, it's already slow coming from the SGR out towards General Motors. Looking a little bit better right around the construction. Hopefully it will not be that crazy Monday. Things seem to have died down just a little bit where most students are out of school. So hopefully traffic will not be too crazy this morning, but we're going to have to take a look-see and see what it looks like. Starting off quite slowly on Thika Road this morning. There was an accident that happened last night right around Wayaki Way, and that's still to be sorted out now. Still has not been cleared, so hopefully that will be sorted out this morning and people can get on their merry way. So everybody just needs to be careful as we look at this right now. So it's slow but moving on Mombasa Road. It's slow but moving on Thika Road. Right around Muthaiga, slow. Guess what? But moving. We'll take a look in about half hour and see how this may have changed. Talk to us this morning. Should you need to, SpiceFMKE is how you can reach us on Twitter. Text on 40127. Let's see how traffic is going to be moving this Monday morning.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings
24
done right.
minutes.
94.
Other headlines. What do you have?
You know, the headline that I'm looking at, I'm not even sure I want to talk about. So why don't I look at something that I want to talk about?
Okay.
Wealthy Kenyans set for early COVID-19 jab.
Wealthy Kenyans.
Yes, headline on Business Daily.
Okay.
Wealthy Kenyans. Two things I'm going to say. One, very simply, the government is in talks with WHO to try and allow the government to Kenya government allow its private health facilities to import the vaccine. Discussions are still taking place. That hasn't happened yet. All right? But of more interest, on page 2 of the Business Daily, Rotich seeks DPP Italy dams probe details. All right? Former Treasury CS Henry Rotich wants Director of Public Prosecutions Nuruddin Haji to disclose what he went to investigate in Italy in July 2019 in connection with the Kimwarer and Aror dams. right? Perhaps I should give a little more detail about this.
Yeah, what do you think?
All right. Appearing before Chief Magistrate Douglas Ogoti, Mr. Rotich, through his lawyer, said the DPP was yet to disclose to the accused persons or file a report of his findings on the tour he made between July 1st and the 20th, 2019. Through the lawyer, Paul Narua, Mr. Rotich said the DPP issued a press statement before heading out of the country, saying he was investigating more of the billions lost. Okay? Now, unfortunately, this is a discussion that is taking place in court, and all we can do is await the report. What I wondered when I read this was, okay, so if he tells us what he went to do in public, how exactly is that going to assist? Perhaps this is what Mr. Rotich wants to bring out.
Yeah, perhaps.
What exactly? Maybe there's something he knows about that. Or maybe
Probably.
he's alluding to the fact that the guy went and found nothing.
Yeah.
And so he's...
Probably. That's what
So he's come to tell you that there's nothing.
basically saying, so you left here with much pomp and fanfare.
Yes, why?
Saying, I am going. You came back, you were quiet.
Yes.
Meanwhile, I'm here on the dock.
Exactly.
Can
And
you give all this?
all the evidence. And also remember, Mr. Rotich has denied wrongdoing.
He
He has denied. Okay? So, unless I misunderstand our laws, that man is innocent until proven guilty. Yes. So until the state can prove that the man is guilty, we can take the view that he is
innocent.
Yes.
Okay.
So, a couple of other things. Of course, today's D-Day. KCPE examinations begin today. Let's look at how 2020 KCPE and KCSE are different. Testing times, the first under the cloud of the COVID-19 pandemic. These national exams go down in history as unique, giving considerations to assure on safety and the moderation of tests after 2020 learning losses. Student safety, wearing face masks at all times, enhanced spacing amongst student candidates, and heightened surveillance to keep out impersonators. Moderation, moderating tests to factor in learning losses following the long school break as a result of COVID-19 to avoid mass failure. So that's one thing that stands out for a lot of people, is that realizing there was a time where students were not in school. So the tests have been moderated to make sure that we don't have a lot of people, a lot of these candidates under the threat of failure, taking into consideration that they were not in school for a long period of time. Pregnant girls, managing the higher number of pregnant girls after learners were exposed to sexual activity during the long break. So we have 1.2 candidates who will start their KCPE exams. 752,981 is the number of students who will sit their Kenya Certificate of Secondary Education exams. And so that kicks off this week, right? Safety of learners is a top priority as exams start. There's a plan to vaccinate all teachers. This was supposed to have started last week. We saw some of this rolling out already. Unfortunately, it has not been completed. It would have been very difficult to do so. So even as the exams begin, more and more teachers will be vaccinated. So the plan to do this before exams started obviously flopped, but the government has assured candidates of their safety through strict adherence to protocols by the Health Ministry. So these are some of the things that we're looking at. Increased spacing between candidates, constant wearing of face masks, and increased surveillance during exams. So Basic Education PS Julius Juan said that schools had been advised to enhance spacing of candidates by spreading them out to ensure social distancing. This is one of the things that they can actually do, and they're looking at 1.22 meters is what is recommended between candidates.
Right.
So obviously more space is going to have to be used and things like this, but they seem to be ready to go. The issues that we had
Space
before
is available because everybody else has closed school.
Everybody else
so
is
you
out.
have the if it's primary school, you have all the
You have
classes
the whole
from
school
standard
use
1
it. Exactly.
and
So the issues
and
that
the
we had,
trees.
the issues that we had seen last Monday of funding and things like that seem to have been ironed out, and exams will begin this week.
Yeah. See what you say. Now, Parliament has been having these sittings or public participation before they go ahead and debate the BBI amendment bill. Okay? So last week, some government agencies went there. One of them was IEBC. Another one was the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics. Now, the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics is saying, looking at our simulation, so they have the data from the census, and they're looking at the number of constituencies that we have right now, and they're looking at ratio of representation. And they're saying that the 70 constituencies proposed in the BBI, not the right way to go. In fact, they're saying maybe what you should have had is 68 additional constituencies instead of 70. And number two, they're saying some of the areas that have been earmarked for extra constituencies, there are some that are getting disenfranchised. So, for example, they talk about the counties of Nairobi, Bungoma, Meru, Homa Bay, Kisii, and Kitui, saying those ones are getting underrepresented, while there are 8 other counties that are getting more and more people, and they'll be overrepresented if we go with this information. They say, for example, Nairobi, which has 17 constituencies at present, has been allocated an extra 12 constituencies. That will make Nairobi have 29 constituencies. not IBC, Kenya National Bureau of Statistics says Nairobi should actually, if we just use the logic, should have 33 constituencies. So Nairobi is actually getting less. They're going to be underrepresented because of the number of people who live in Nairobi and the number of people per square kilometer in Nairobi. They say 1.4 million households, one of the heaviest population densities in the country, where up to 6,247 people live in a square kilometer.
True.
Meru has been allocated 2 more constituencies, bringing the total to 11. Their simulation shows that the county deserves 3 new constituencies, bringing it to 12. So does Kitui, which with 8 constituencies did not get any allocation, when it in fact requires 1 more to bring the total to 9. Kitui has a population of 1.13 million people in 2019, spread over 30,000 square kilometers. The county has 261,000 households. It has 37 people per square kilometer. So all these data by KNBS, they're saying the spread of these constituencies, first of all, is not based on information. It could be based on just political gerrymandering and horse trading. 2, we also would have wanted to actually give you a bit more information with better stimulation. But unfortunately, guess what? And Mr. Chairman of the Parliamentary Committee, we'd like you to help us here. We are not getting information from the IEBC. We'd want to get data from IEBC in terms of registered voters and where they actually are. IEBC says, if we give Kenya National Bureau of Statistics that data, then we are basically ceding our mandate as a constitutional commission. We can't give them that data. The raw data they want, we can't give them. That is ours. This is where the government does not work as one.
Let me ask this question. When the Commission on Revenue Allocation go about their business, where do they get their data from? Because if I look at the allocation of funding for the counties and the details they went into to actually explain why it is certain areas got this amount of money and why, everything that they did in great detail, where do they get their data from?
They should be getting their data from KNBS and IEBC.
Precisely. Now, let me say why I'm asking this question.
Right.
I understand what the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics is saying, but why don't they take a leaf from what the Commission on Revenue Allocation have already done? Remember, they were also allocating resources. And constituencies are irrelevant, completely irrelevant if resources are not tied in to their existence.
Yes.
Okay. So, when you say Nairobi is underrepresented, what other factors are you looking into apart from the population? Because Nairobi is developed. So, in terms of what is a constituency, what's the CDF supposed to do? Help development. Now, there are areas in this country that you may say they are overrepresented, but the truth of the matter is overrepresented what? By the number of members of parliament or by development? What is their level of development? Do they have some of the very basic things that people who live in big cities or towns take for granted? And the answer will be no. The Commission on Revenue Allocation took some of these things into account when they were going about dividing the revenue for these counties. So I see mischief is afoot here.
I think, though, the issue here, though, is, first of all, the Commission on Revenue Allocation looks at all this data. Do they get the raw data from IEBC? Clearly, IEBC, if you just go by what IEBC is responding here, no, they don't.
But
so there's the other data that they use, which they use to make the basis of their formula. Now, what KNBS is basically saying is, would have wanted to get deeper and more granular, because that's the job that we do. We look at data and we simulate and we get, but we do not have the specific information about voters per electoral area. What we have is what we have, which is we know the population of a certain county. Now, knowing the population of a certain county, do we know the number of voters registered in that county so that we can then correlate this information?
Eric, you know why I say mischief? every year, 5 years, should I say, when we have our elections, we are presented not just with the voter turnout, but the number of registered voters.
Yes.
That information is there.
Yes.
Now, if I were a statistician, I can extrapolate, knowing the number of people who enter the age of registration or the age of adulthood so that they can vote. We also have information about the people who actually register and who actually vote. This information is there. The detailed information may be absent.
Yes.
And it's only IEBC that can give it to you. But it does not mean that you cannot conjecture.
That's why they've done.
No.
Which is why they're saying under representation, over representation, we propose instead of 70, you should have gone for 68.
You know.
Because they say, we know the population of the country, we know where they are, and we also have that baseline, not baseline, but top-level information from IEBC on registered voters per constituency, per ward.
Actually, it is baseline if you think about it. Let me explain again why I'm saying it is mischievous. Kenya National Bureau of Statistics do an excellent job of giving us some info. In fact, every time I read their reports, they're fascinating to read. The details into which they go and what they tell us, all right? This thing that they are pointing to now did not occur now. This discussion on the BBI has been going on for the longest time, and everybody and their relatives have had anything they have to say said. Okay?
Yes.
We now have a situation where we are on the home stretch, so to speak. All right? This matter comes up. The question that I'm asking is the question I always ask: why now?
Why now? And why not now? This is as good a stage as any other.
That is true.
Did those people who are mapping out constituencies have a sitting with IEBC, with the data statisticians, with the Commission?
First of all, who are these people who mapped this thing out?
Who decided the 70 and where the 70 are going to
Who are
go?
these people, first of all, who mapped it out? And exactly. Now, if indeed all these questions are unanswered, and we're talking about state agencies who are given the mandate to ensure that these details are made public,
Yes.
again, mischief afoot.
Wacha tuone. I have another story here, and this is a tragic selfie that left 5 people dead in Lake Victoria. Page 8 of The Nation. A selfie moment turned tragic when 5 people drowned in Lake Victoria following a boat accident on Saturday evening. Their mission to console a bereaved colleague ended in tears when their boat capsized about 200 meters from Arongo Beach in Seme Sub-County. Eyewitnesses said the vessel lost balance and plunged into the lake when one of the mourners, awed by the beauty around her, stood up to take a photo, oblivious of the danger. She caused the vessel to capsize due to imbalance. When she stood up to capture the moment, that's when I lost control, according to coxswain George Onyango. Following the ordeal, John Kimemia and Trevor Okoth, 14, were also rescued. After the accident, fishermen and local drivers moved fast and recovered 3 bodies as the search for the other 2 resumed yesterday. So basically, this woman stood up to take a selfie. So that's not advisable.
Actually, it depends on the size of the boat. If you enter some of these small boats, whether they're being rowed or whether they have a small outboard, as they call it, you are sat, you're placed in a sitting position so that you balance your weight. And you are asked to simply sit. Any movement automatically tilts the boat. Any movement by one individual.
Wow.
This was clearly a small boat with what? Less than 10 people?
Wow.
One person standing up. Well, it's like a motorbike. Eh? If you're being carried on a motorbike and you suddenly decide that you are making an unusual movement, that motorbike is going to lose control and it'll capsize. It'll likely, should we say, cause an accident.
Wow.
Balance. This person didn't know.
Clearly.
They didn't know.
Clearly. I
And
mean,
what-
she just looked at, oh my goodness. That
And what
looks
is
so
also
beautiful.
clear is that they were not told.
That you shouldn't, yeah, exactly.
Many of those boats that ply the lake, one of the first things they do is, apart from sitting down, you are given a bucket or you're given a plastic container with which to keep emptying the water which seeps into the boat.
Right.
Yes. Porous little vessels. But once you understand that, it's just something that you do.
Okay.
This is unfortunate.
Quite unfortunate. Another headline.
Right.
Okay, so Badi eyes KFS land in city search for a new graveyard. The Nairobi Metropolitan Services has entered into negotiations with the Kenya Forest Service over a proposed land swap deal. in its bid to acquire new land to replace the filled-up Langata cemetery.
Okay.
The talks, if successful, will finally bring to an end Nairobi's 4-year search for a new burial site. NMS Director General Mohamed Badi says talks also involve the Ministries of Environment and Lands, and he said the NMS has identified a piece of land next to Langata Cemetery to act as a burial ground for Muslims, Christians and Hindus. He said another piece of land that had initially been proposed for the new cemetery was found to be too far from the city. The 100-acre Langata Cemetery was declared full 20 years ago, but several attempts by the county government to get an alternative land had hit a dead end. This has forced families to bury their loved ones in shallow graves. Appeals by City Hall for residents to embrace cremations has fallen on deaf ears. This is now the second time that the Nairobi City government has resorted to a land swap deal in an effort to acquire a new cemetery, owing to land scarcity.
Okay.
So this might happen now.
So which land is the Nairobi Metropolitan proposing?
Oh, to swap?
Yeah, it's a swap. So you want a bit of land in Langata next to the forest. So what are you giving KFS?
What are you giving them? That's very interesting because it doesn't say.
Okay. Clearly there's a...
So it's funds. It's funds.
Oh, it's funds.
It's funds. The swap is you give us land, we give you money, right?
By the way,
that is
and
purchase.
it's 150 million shillings is what we're talking about.
You know, this issue of forest land is tricky. You know, most of the construction that is taking place in Langata, depending on how far back you want to go, starting with the Met Station, okay, as you head towards the Great Corner, that was forest land. As you continue,
Yes.
Jamhuri Park,
Yes.
as you continue,
Even Lanana School is forest land.
as you continue,
All the way to Ngong.
as you continue.
Oh, yeah, okay. Ad
Yes.
infinitum.
Yes, it was.
Okay.
It was. Now, there are ways in which you legally, should we say, what do you call it, change of user. You follow a process so that land that was previously demarcated for a certain particular use is changed to something else. Now, some of the issues that we've seen arising over the years is that that process did not follow due diligence. Yes. And that's where, remember there was a time when some housing estates in Langata were due for demolition and they had been presented as being prime targets for demolition. The reason? Forest land. And the reason why this issue of forest land is tricky, remember, when we had issues going back, this is now, of course, quite a while back.
Prehistoric.
It's prehistoric, early on in this century. The century isn't very old when we had issues with the Mao forest. That, I think, brought to our attention the significance and the importance of forest cover in any nation. Now, that need and that importance hasn't gone down. But as our planners go about their business, surely this balance between understanding what is important for us environmentally and how it is that human encroachment can be contained and balanced, it's a debate that is going to go on for a long time to come.
Why? Talking about forests, let's go to Kwale. Officials at the National Museums of Kenya in Kilifi, not Kwale, have expressed disappointment following a resolution by the National Environmental Complaints Committee to relocate the sacred Kaya Kauma forest in Ganze constituency to pave way for, wait for it, quarrying activities by Chinese construction firms. The forest is listed among the 9 World Heritage Sites in the coast region by the UNESCO. The development comes after NECC conducted an investigation into claims of environmental degradation due to uncontrolled mining activities in Jaribuni in 2019, following a public outcry. Speaking in his office, Coast Forest Conservation Unit Officer Lawrence Chiro said quarrying activities are threatening the survival of the forest and termed the recommendation as ignorant and irresponsible. It's ridiculous and irresponsible for the National Environmental Complaints Committee to make recommendations that a World Heritage Site, a sacred and sensitive area, be relocated. We don't know whether these NECC guys have keenly considered what the Kaya forests are to justify their decision.
Relocate
there.
I find that interesting. Relocate. So this is not just a forest. Prior to it being a World Heritage Site and all that, it was a place that the locals consider to be sacred.
Yes.
It is theirs. It belongs to them.
Yes.
Long before independence, blah, blah, blah. So you now want to relocate this particular geographical area
shrine.
with all its importance. How do you do that?
Yes.
It's gazetted as a UNESCO World Heritage Site.
So you want to...
now there's people who are coming to put up quarry and all, and matter was complained by the public. Matter went to the National Environment Complaints Committee. They sat back and they're like, you can move the shrine. We need that.
You know, there's some people...
Activity.
You know, when you talk about mental health issues in this country, they are far more serious than we realize, because I'm beginning to understand that there are people in decision-making position in this country who really are a danger because they are not sound mentally. How do you get to make such... I mean, look, you want to move... It's not the National Museums of Kenya and you're saying, well, let's move this building to another building. It's not.
It's a shrine.
It's a shrine.
Kaya Kauma. And they're saying, in fact, now the local community are complaining and saying the blasting around this area is causing a lot of environmental degradation, roads cracking. There's a lot of the depressions extending to schools, risking lives of thousands of pupils. They're citing thick dust produced by lorries ferrying ballast from the quarry, and the contamination of River Nzovuni, the only fresh water source in the area. All these things have happened. Locals have raised complaints. Complaints have been taken to the authority that's required to listen to the complaints. The authority listened and they were like, okay. You know what? I think the easiest thing here for us to do is let's move Kaya Kauma and then let the quarry continue.
Eric, who came up with this ridiculously lunatic idea in the first place?
Those people, their names are?
The business people who went to do the quarry.
Which ministry does this fall under?
Environment. Yes.
And surely we have a CS for environment, we have a PS for environment. Yeah. What do they have to say about this?
Very interesting to hear.
This is utter undiluted madness.
One of those that you can't understand. Keep it right here. Good morning. It's the Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation, and it's now 7 o'clock.
Spice up your life. Spice FM, Nakuru. Traffic.
Okay, so it's slow Mombasa Road. It's slow on Thika Road. Coming into the city, we're going to have a few problems this morning. It looks like it's slow coming off Kiambu Road as you try to get to Muthaiga Square and then out to the Pangani Underpass. That's what it's looking like. Typical Monday morning traffic. It's actually not too crazy today. We haven't seen any cries out of madness this morning just yet. Okay, so we know that there is some traffic coming from Syokimau headed out towards Mombasa Road, out towards General Motors. That's slow. But again, not too crazy just yet. It might pick up in a bit, but we're going to keep an eye on, see how things are moving along today. Thika Road is behaving very well today, and everybody is giving a round of applause for that. And let's hope it can be maintained through the morning. All right, everything's up. Let's see what it looks like in a short while. SpiceFM KE, that's how you can get in touch with us on Twitter this morning and keep things moving this Monday morning.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Biggest conversation. It is The Situation Room. We thank you very much for tuning in. This is the second hour of the show today. We are live on SpiceFM every weekday morning, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. We also live stream the show on SpiceFM KE, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. And, we are also now live on KTN Home for the next 2 hours. A very good morning to you, our audience on KTN Home, watching us, watching a radio experience on your TV. Let's begin the hour with today's proverb from CT.
When a once beautiful piece of cloth turns to rags, no one remembers that it was woven by Ukwe master weavers. Yes.
Okay. No one remembers it was woven by experienced who?
No.
Ukwe.
No.
Master.
Yes.
Ukwe master weavers.
Yes, not just
Who are
weavers.
those?
Well, Igbo community. You know, when you talk about civilization, what people think and remember are it starts with ancient civilizations.
Right.
Civilizations that sort of like ruled their part of the world at that particular point in time.
Right.
And whose way of life dominated others. Okay? They were represented geographically by what we call empires. But what many people don't seem to understand is that civilization, this way of life, had been entrenched in very many communities. Africa was not left out. They had their way of life. Now, if you go to the western part of this particular lovely continent, you will find that there were people who were experts, one, in simply ensuring that they crafted beautiful ornaments. There are those who were experts in crafting or bringing into being cloth. There were people who were experts in building ships or boats. There were people who were experts in weapons. There were people who were experts in putting up structures. All these people were experts, and it's knowledge that was passed on from one generation to the next. Now, in Nigeria, among the Igbo people, is where you find these Ukwe master weavers. These are people who are not just weavers, they are people who are known for their craft. And the cloth that they produced was unique. So when you saw it, you knew. Even as I speak today, if you go to that part of the world, you will find that there's cloth that is specific to certain areas, and you'll be told this is a cloth for this ceremony, this is a cloth you use for this function, this is a cloth you use on this particular day.
You're right.
And they'll even tell you who it is who makes that cloth.
Absolutely. And there's some families that are known by a particular kind of cloth, or some clans that are known for a particular pattern.
Have I represented it clearly?
100%. Fantastic, City.
Thank you very much.
Wow. And those people got there?
No, this is just one of...
The Ukwe is just one of the particular tribes that weave kinds of baskets.
Sawa. Okay, today, what day is it again today, Ndu?
Today is World Water Day. Okay?
Okay. World Water Day.
Yes.
All right. And being a big day as it is, there's a lot that needs to be celebrated when it comes to water. You know, when you talk about water, a couple of years ago, when Wangari Maathai was actually saying, you know what, the next conflicts are going to be about resources. And specifically, we'll get to a point where the next conflicts will be about water. We're already seeing those in various parts. And therefore, water is as important a resource as you can even imagine.
Right.
So when you talk about World Water Day, there's a theme for this year. There's what it basically means. There's what the focus is going to be for today. First adopted by the UN General Assembly on December 22nd, 1992, after which March 22nd was declared as World Water Day and is celebrated around the world since 1993. World Water Day is observed annually across the globe with the purpose of highlighting the importance of water and raising awareness about the water crisis that the world faces. According to UN website, the main focus of the day today is to support the achievement of Sustainable Development Goal SDG 6, which is water and sanitation for all by 2030. Water and sanitation for all by 2030. 8 years. Water and sanitation for all. Okay.
Oh, you're assuming that it just began 2021.
How realistic would it? Okay, these are SDGs that were adopted following the MDGs.
MDGs, yeah.
And you're still talking about 2030 and water and sanitation for all. If you look at many countries now, for example, let's just focus on Kenya. The journey towards water and sanitation for all by 2030. Can we even say we are heading anywhere close? Experts may even tell us that, yes, we're actually heading somewhere.
But Eric, let's start by first of all asking ourselves, when we talk about water for all, do we have the resource? Is the resource available locally? And the answer is yes.
Do we have water?
Yes, we do have water. Are we able to harness it, and are we able to ensure that it is available in the measure that meets those international standards? Are we able to? The answer again is yes. Are we going to? The answer is no.
And the reason?
If we continue with business as usual, okay, where
behaving normally,
as our CS for Health has put it, if we go about our business as usual, we say things which we have no intentions of actually fulfilling. We make decisions that clearly cause more harm than good. Then even if we had all the resources that are available, we still would not be able to meet the goals or reach the promised land that we keep talking about and keep promising the citizens that we will get to.
Let's have a water conversation now with Julie Mulonga. She is the director of Wetlands International East Africa, and she joins us on the line now. Julie, good morning.
Good morning, Eric. How are you this morning?
Very well, thank you. Welcome to the Situation Room.
Thank you very much.
Let's first of all start by understanding what you do. Wetlands International Eastern Africa.
Wetlands International is actually a global organization. We're headquartered in the Netherlands. But here in Kenya, this is the regional office. So we actually work in 5 different countries: Kenya, Uganda, South Sudan, Ethiopia, and Tanzania. So basically our work is the conservation and management of wetlands. So that's what we are doing right now in Kenya.
Okay.
What is so obviously it's a big issue. We've moved from MDGs to SDGs now and looking at where we want to be in 2030. And if you're looking at the management and sustainability of wetlands in the country, which are vital, what is the country situation for Kenya right now?
Okay, I'll start more looking generally at water resources. So I think, as you quite correctly said, when you look at the state of our water resources, the management is very wanting. And when we go further to our wetlands, for a long time, the wetlands have actually been considered as wastelands. In fact, people call them swamps.
Yep.
And a lot of people want to get rid of these wetlands. But actually, the true reality is wetlands have a lot of value in terms of absorbing water and storing that water. And so far, we've not been doing very well. If you look at the Rift Valley lakes, for example, and their current state, you can see the flooding that's happening and the number of people that are being displaced. So there's a lot to be done in terms of our water resources.
Now, when you talk about water resources, there's something I mentioned. I may have spoken out of turn, but I now want your expert advice on this. Does Kenya have adequate water resources to meet the needs of its people?
What I would say is that in some areas you don't find, for example, go to the northern part of Kenya, you may not find them having sufficient surface water resources. But as you heard a few years ago, in the Turkana area, there was actually a lot of groundwater that was discovered. So in my view, we do have the water resources, which may not be equitably distributed. However, if we're able to manage these well, then we'll be able to ensure that most people in the country have adequate water resources or water available to them.
Do we have, for instance, scientific expertise or scientific knowledge, not necessarily available to us in Kenya, but internationally, that can actually give you a clear indication of your capacity or the water resources you have within a country? Because the fact that a place is semi-arid, from what I read, doesn't mean that they don't have water resources. It's just that what you call surface water resources are not readily seen, but they actually may exist. Is this true?
One, Kenya, I believe, now has a UNESCO groundwater center in the country. So in terms of capacity, we should be having that capacity. If you go to our universities in Kenya, water resources is taught to most of these people. But what I feel is actually lacking is taking this to the next level. One, you find that even a lot of the research that is done is not shared. It's just not shared. A lot of research has been done.
Shared by whom to whom?
Shared by researchers to the various people that it's supposed to reach. Be it the policy makers, decision makers, be it the people who are in management. So this information is actually not being shared. Number two, we have research centers which are also specifically for water. We have the Kenya Water Institute.
Yep.
We have institutes even at Kenyatta University, I believe. I'm not sure whether they have sufficient resources to be able to do the research that they're supposed to do. So that's another gap. So we invest a lot in we don't invest in doing the research that is needed to be able to ensure that our water resources are managed in a sustainable way.
But would you say, why do you think this is the case? I'm asking this because remembering from 2003, the NAC government and the sort of effort it appeared to be given to water and water resources, coming up with all those reforms in the water sector, upscaling, for example, Kawi and Water Institute and saying this is what your mandate shall be. Are you saying that did not bear fruit?
Unfortunately, yes. When I look at what is needed to be able to take all this forward, there's a number of billions that were put on paper. And what you find is that within the country, we are only able to raise maybe 30% of those resources. And then we depend maybe on the international community to be able to raise the rest of the money. So we've not actually reached our target in being able to actually get all those resources to be able to take us to the next level. So we may have very good documents, but unfortunately the resources to be able to roll those documents out may not be readily available. So maybe that is where the issue is.
And what is it that organizations such as yours, and you're not the only organization dealing with water and environmental matters and sanitation in the country, yours, private sector, what efforts have you made to try and move this ball along?
I think, as you know, we are not the government. Our role is just to support. So where we can support, we raise resources to be able to work, for example, with communities, to be able to conserve wetlands within the country. So in that respect, we've at least supported in some way. As Wetlands International, for example, when it came to the wetlands policy, we were able to support to make this document be developed.
Right.
But in terms of implementation, we ourselves cannot do this alone. Be it the private sector, Wetlands International, whoever it may be. We've received a lot of support from the government in terms of the activities we need to do. But I still insist we are not the government, and the mandate is not ours to be able to do all these things. We do what we can, and that's all we can do for now.
So with the what can be done, what has been done, I think this is what we are really looking at. With what can be done beyond the development of a project paper, for example, and to say that there are wetlands in the country that can then be preserved, what has been done?
Oh, a lot has been done in terms of, for example, we now have an atlas now identifying the wetlands that are under specific threat. As you know, we have a convention, international convention that governs wetlands. So within the country, there are 6 wetlands that have been declared wetlands of international importance. So in terms of these wetlands, at least we have supported in ensuring that these wetlands are declared wetlands of international importance. So most of the wetlands within the Rift Valley. And then, as I said, we've done a lot of work with the communities. So in terms of making them aware of what is needed when it comes to conservation of these wetlands. And then, of course, where we are able to generating knowledge, because I think, as I said in the beginning, without the knowledge, you cannot be able to conserve these different wetlands. So we've worked a lot in trying to develop knowledge in some of these wetlands. The other day, we were able to work in the Seriousness wetlands, for example, which is at the border of Kenya and Uganda, developing a very good knowledge base on these wetlands. And I think what's very important is that we should not ignore what the communities are doing. The communities have done a lot. So combining the knowledge that the communities have and the scientific knowledge we have and coming up with a wetland management plan. And then what we realize, it's not enough to come up with these management plans because they remain as documents that you cannot really implement. So developing conservation investment plans. So that is what we did, for example, for Seriousness wetlands. So we already have a conservation investment plan that we are then able to go out and seek the funds to be able to implement some of those activities that have been proposed by the communities and the other stakeholders within that wetland. So in the wetlands we work, we try and do that sort of work.
Can we take a few steps back here, maybe for the benefit of those who may not understand? What exactly are the benefits of wetlands and what do they then provide for the country? Even as we're going towards their preservation and such, how beneficial are they to having them in the country in the first place? And what do they offer? What do they provide?
Oh, wetlands have a lot of benefits. Now, when we come to the definition of wetlands, they say that wetlands are where the land meets the water. So basically, wetlands provide water, which is our theme for today's World Water Day. Wetlands is where you find fish. You find lots of resources. And of course, if you go to an area like the Tana Delta, you find that in these wetlands, that's where the pastoralists find the pasture. And more importantly, the wetlands actually store water. I think I began with that. They act as sponges. So they absorb that water and slowly release it. So specifically when there are droughts, this is when they become very, very crucial. And more importantly is that they absorb this water and also take it to the ground. And so the groundwater is replenished. And then more important is that they also take part in what is known as the water cycle. I think when we were in high school, we learned about the water cycle. Water evaporates, goes to the cloud, it rains, it goes back, it's stored. So wetlands are important. So that is what we see. Apart from that, there are those cultural values. There are a lot of people who value wetlands in terms of their cultural benefit, spiritual benefit. In certain areas, that's what they're important for. And then we are talking about climate change. A lot of people don't know that wetlands actually capture carbon. Where it becomes important when it comes to climate change. And then lastly, there are very many different types of wetlands. And one type of wetland that we usually ignore are the mangroves at the coast. And there, those wetlands with those mangroves protect the coastline. So I think those are just some of the subtle benefits that I can go through.
Are they really subtle?
But if I was to go through all the benefits, there are many more benefits that these wetlands offer.
But from listening to you, really, I wouldn't call them subtle. I would call them pertinent. Everything that you've said so far kind can't be just something that you look at as and state as being, well, just something that is there. It's something that is fundamental to understanding water and everything around it. I want to draw your attention to something that one reads about fairly often, and that's politics in relation to water. The importance of it. I think this came to the fore in our region recently with the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. That discussion is still ongoing. Other things have come up and seem to have taken center stage in the reporting of news, but the waters of the Nile and the dams that have been built on it, they bring about certain political tensions. Now, can you talk a little bit about this and tell us how it is that one can mitigate about this in making decisions that may help a nation but may not necessarily help other countries that share the same resource?
Oh, yes. I think that's one thing that's really at my heart. And I believe that you cannot stop some of these developments. That is what I believe in. The dams are needed. We need electricity. We need water for agriculture and so on. So this is where I insist on knowledge again. We should be able to gather sufficient knowledge as we put up these different developments, these big dams and so on. How much water should they be storing? How much should they be letting out? We are talking about the Grand Renaissance Dam, but up in the Tana, we also have a big dam that's up for development, which will also affect the people downstream in the Tana Delta. So what I would encourage is, rather than saying we should not put up these big developments, go back to the science and be able to sort of inform whoever's making the decisions on how best to design them, so that we have a win-win situation, so that the people downstream do not suffer. So in terms of the different countries, this also becomes important, because when you look at the people who depend on the Nile River, a lot of them, Egypt, depend a lot on the water that comes from the Nile. So really you cannot stop what is happening. So rather than stopping it, develop good science. Yeah.
And what exactly would one need to do? What steps would one need to take, and how would then one ensure that these benefits that could accrue from such a development are actually attained?
Very easy. We did what is called the economics for ecosystems and biodiversity study. So in that study, we sort of put a value to all these different benefits from the dams and so on, and also for the ecosystems, for the people, and so on. So you look at all the different aspects, and you come up with a scenario where nobody loses, a win-win situation. So you sit at the table with the different stakeholders, and you're able to agree and sort of put up a scenario where everybody benefits. So it is possible, but it involves coming to the table, and I think that's what integrated water resource management is all about. Basically bringing all stakeholders to the table and being able to sit and discuss all these different issues.
As we conclude the conversation, I just want to ask this question. So there's a lot that you've said, a lot that could be done that's not being done, that has not been done. And it's not just today, it's year on year. If we look at the SDGs and the journey towards having that, everybody having access to water and sanitation within the next 8 years, the country Kenya committing itself, having a lot of resources in terms of a ministry and state departments that deal with water. How can we move from talk shop to action?
Well, I think one very good thing we've done is that we already have our new Water Act in place. We have the Water Act 2016, which has we have water resources, we have water supply and sanitation catered for within that Water Act. So water resources is still at the national level, while water supply has more or less been devolved. So in my view, it's being able to actually implement what is already in place. And what I always insist on is coming to the table and talking. I think we are still all in our little cocoons. Somebody needs to put all of us together. I think you talked about the different organizations, Wetlands International, and so on. We need to all come to the table, the private sector, the communities, and who have you. Because we all value water in different ways. But if we can come and talk about it and how we can improve it, I think that would help us be able to reach these targets that we are talking about. Because this is not the first time that we've had targets in terms of water. But I think where we can make a difference is being able to talk about it frankly and sitting at a table and being able to do the same.
Julie, thank you very much for speaking to us. Julie Mulonga is the Director of Wetlands International Eastern Africa, talking to us today about World Water Day and what needs to be done. Asante sana for joining us today, and we wish you a happy World Water Day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Keep it right here for more conversations. And as we take this break, remember, so the Magical Kenya Open started on Thursday. It concluded yesterday, and South African Justin Harding won that. That's not the end. There's still another European Tour golf tournament taking place in the country from Tuesday, the 23rd up to the 26th on Friday. The Kenya Savannah Classic takes place at the Current Country Club, still supported by Safaricom, Wilken Wireless, Sports, Arts and Social Development Fund, the Current Country Club, Johnny Walker, Keringat, Hemingway, the Standard Group. And the Standard Group's role here is to make sure that you follow this event from wherever you are. You can watch this on KTN News and also on KTN on the standard digital platforms. This is the Kenya Savannah Classic that begins on Tuesday, goes on until Friday. 29 minutes after 7. Let's take a look at the traffic and the weather.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life.
Have you seen them? Am I lying?
Yes, it's a very nice outfit, I must say. Good
Thank
job.
you. Asante sana.
The compliment is well received.
Good morning and thank you. Everyone was asking me what channel is SpiceFM.
96.7. Tell them that, right?
Yes, now they know.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Pleasure to have
what
you.
What a beautiful studio, my friend.
I've been to other radio stations, but I've never seen anything like this.
Thank you. And it's very nice to be in a modern studio. Absolutely brilliant.
And I have to say, it's a very cool ambiance here in your radio room. Just for our listeners, I think it is below zero in this room here. Very Swiss temperatures.
Spice FM. Spice up your life. The weather with
mostly cloudy
Spice
conditions
FM.
in Nairobi this morning at 16 degrees. It's going to go to highs of 26 today. We'll see highs of 25 in Nyeri. It's cloudy at 15 right now. It's sunny, however, in Nakuru at 14. Highs of 25. Highs of 25 also in Eldoret, where it's sunny at 15 right now. Partly sunny conditions in Kisumu at 21. Highs of 30 and lows of 20 today. 31 will be the high in Kakamega. It's partly sunny right now at 19. Mostly sunny conditions in Mombasa at 27. Highs of 33. Coming down to lows of 26. 27 will be the low in Malindi today. It's mostly sunny right now at 28. 26 will also be the high in Kampala. It's partly sunny at 19. Will come down to lows of just 19. It's raining in Dar es Salaam right now at 25. We'll see highs of 32 and lows of 26. Cloudy conditions in Johannesburg at 15, highs of 23 and lows of 14. It's raining in Lagos now at 27. That'll be the low for today, going to highs of 30. And 32 will be the high in Kinshasa. It's partly cloudy at 23. It'll rise and come down to a low of 24. All right, so we still see some slow traffic then on Mombasa Road today. Getting out into the city is taking some time to get out of this one. As you get to the city, as you get to the Nyeri Stadium roundabout, it's going to slow down some Uhuru Highway, then getting into the city centre all the way through to Westlands. It's snaking along this Monday morning. Let's look at Jogo Road coming off and going on to Landis Road right around the roundabout at the City Stadium. It slows down also as you're trying to get into the CBD, but it's nothing crazy just yet. The bypass is behaving beautifully well this morning. Southern, Eastern, Northern, Red Hill looks great. Coming off Thika Road as well, not too terrible. A little bit on Kiambu Road as you join then Muthaiga Square to get to the Pangani underpass, out then towards Ngara, out then towards the Globe Cinema overpass. So we're having a good morning when it comes to traffic. Am I lying? Let me know if I am. SpiceFM KE on Twitter. Text 40127.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
This is Kenya's biggest conversation, the Situation Room. Donald is asking, City, so can we say leo ni sikukuu ya maji?
We can. We actually can.
Ni sikukuu ya maji.
Well, one could argue that every day is a sikukuu ya maji, but this is the specific day in which we focus all things and make them about water. And we saturate our minds with everything that has to do with water, its importance, and not just important, its ever increasing significance in our lives. See, what with climate change, populations, pollution, all these things make water very, very central to everything that we do. And the value of it even more, because it may be there, but what if it's polluted? It is there. The population has increased and steps haven't been taken to ensure that the distribution is equitable so that everybody can enjoy this resource, which is free, by the way.
What's Sikuku?
Sikukuu ni holiday.
Okay.
If you divide a Sikuku, main day,
big day,
big day,
D-Day.
Big day, D-Day, yes, but holiday.
Okay. Now, after so long, I know exactly what.
So I used to think it was with
Christmas.
that,
but now,
I think you thought.
What do you think exactly? Well, you are not wrong, because it is a day of celebration.
Isn't it?
Yes, but then we've also made it into people are named after it. I don't know whether the former MP, okay?
Who? Shikuku?
Yes, whether
it was Sikuku
recoined, or whether it had to do something to do with Kuku. I'm not really sure.
Kuku
However,
the cuckoo or Kuku the bird?
yes, but then the linguistic interference also comes in. My part of the world, it is Sikuku. The SH is silent.
It was Martin Sukuku.
Yes.
Hey, surely. Where? Yeah. So today is Water Christmas.
Okay. Anyway, I want to use it. It's okay.
It's Christmas of water. Sour.
Okay.
Let's talk about COVID. Okay, and we'll have this conversation for the next 1.5 hours of what's happening with COVID-19 in the country.
Sure.
And the vaccination drive. So, talk about vaccination and development of vaccines globally. There's a global conversation. We localize that conversation in terms of, so what exactly needs to happen in terms of vaccine and how shall we roll out the vaccine. The Ministry of Health, very good at setting up task forces and coming up with protocols. They did exactly that, set up a task force to work on how is it that we are going to deal with vaccine rollout to ensure that as many people in our population get this vaccine. How do we make sure that we actually also have a plan of how to apply for this vaccine? Do we join any movement that is looking at how we can get the vaccine? That's why Kenya joined COVAX. That's why we applied for these vaccines. So they came into the country. An entire rollout plan was developed by experts, led by doctors, and it included other people in that task force. What needs to happen? So all those things that were required to happen were presented to the president, and he was taken through it, and he sat there and he was like, experts in the ministry, do you agree? They said yes. So fine, let's go ahead with it. So there's an entire rollout strategy of how this COVID vaccine gets into the country, where it goes to. This is the government one. There's this new conversation about, okay, how about private sector supplementing government efforts by also being allowed to import vaccines and also being allowed to get the vaccine accessible to people? Of course, the government it has said that it will look at how much do you pay for that, just to make sure that the citizen is not being exploited by unscrupulous traders. All right? Even if it arrives in the country, it has got to be approved by the relevant authorities that this is vaccine that can be used on the population in Kenya. So all those things, that's going on. At the same time, bubbling under is this whole conversation about the vaccine. And there's the vaccine hesitancy being led by some senior and vocal people, for example, the chairman of the Catholic Doctors Association, who's come out to say this. The chairman of the, they're not called traditional healers, Herbalists Association. He's called Professor Gedai. Very well learned person. He says, okay, but as we talk about this, let's think about the vaccine. And then very many other people who are raising questions about vaccine and whether we need to go ahead with the vaccine. So there is conversation left, right, and center. Where are you as CT in the middle? What influences the decision that you make to go ahead and get the vaccine?
I'm at an advantage here in this sense, given what I have done for the longest time. When you are involved in medical research, depending on what you're doing, you will, of necessity, be vaccinated, whether it is HPV, whether it is some other vaccination that would put you at an advantage when it comes to preventing any harm that may come to you because of exposure. These are things that were considered normal. In fact, part of the protocol in being part and parcel of a research project would be to ensure that you have taken care of the health needs that you, the research scientists, have. So you yourselves, if, for instance, we are here trying to talk to people about ensuring that they have vaccines, one of the first things that you encourage the people who are involved is to get the vaccines themselves.
Sure.
So when you're discussing the vaccine, you're talking about something that you know. In HIV, we encouraged people to actually get tested. So that when you are talking to people about testing, you're talking about something that you know.
Yeah.
When we talked about voluntary medical male circumcision, we encourage, remember this is voluntary, we encourage men to get circumcised so that when you talk to people about circumcision, you're talking about something that you know.
You have personal experience.
Yes. Now, one of the things that I have been, should we say, delighted about with the Standard Media is that they took the step of getting people tested as an organization so that people know their results. You see, when you know your status, you are then in a wonderful position to take appropriate steps.
Are we still talking about HIV or this COVID?
Oh, we've moved. We are now in COVID.
Okay.
Fast forward, COVID.
Okay.
HIV behind. That was historical. Reference point. Current. COVID. Now, I have been tested for COVID, found to be negative. I have been vaccinated for COVID. And the government rollout of COVID was in, well, the center I went to was in Mbagathi.
The rollout of the COVID vaccine.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
What did I say exactly?
You said the rollout of COVID, and that would have been interesting.
Oh, the rollout of COVID would have been terrible, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Well, the rollout of COVID was met by the rollout of the vaccine. Right?
So you've gotten the vaccine already?
I have been vaccinated.
Mbagathi.
I have been vaccinated.
Okay.
Yes.
You fall in a category of people who work in the healthcare space.
I went there in that capacity as somebody who works in the healthcare space, and I found that they had opened it up to other people who were
You're also a teacher.
I was also a teacher. I was also had a certain chronological advantage. Put in layman's terms, I'm old. And then others who, like me, had that same claim also presented themselves.
So for this, you were a jack of all trades.
Let me tell you, this is one of those rare occasions where being elderly was good.
Right.
Let's bring in Dr. Willis Akhwale, who joins us now on the line. Dr. Akhwale is the chairman of the task force that came up with the entire rollout plan for the COVID vaccine, and they're also in charge of managing how that is being handled. He joins us on the line now. Good morning, Daktari.
Good morning to you. Good morning to you.
Thank you very much for joining us. Welcome to the Situation Room.
Thank you.
In the room, you have CT Muga Nduoko and I'm Eric Latif. And the conversation that we want to have, of course, is around the vaccine rollout. So first of all, We saw the vaccine arrive. It was taken to Kitengela. Then it has been rolled out. We've seen the governor saying we have received the vaccine and we are going ahead to vaccinate. Are we still vaccinating the first group that your task force said should be vaccinated? This is healthcare workers, medics, teachers, and people in security. Or have we started now rolling out to other people, maybe somebody who works next to the governor and the governor has been vaccinated, something like that?
So thank you for that. So we had a deployment plan, and it prioritized the group that you've highlighted. However, sometime last week, we decided to also put the clergy as frontline, especially considering that these are the people who are now exposed to a lot of people suffering from COVID. They are the people who are going to go to the wards, to the hospital. They conduct the final rites. And, funerals are a major spreader of COVID. So this group was included. Now, the other thing that happened is that we did not know that by the time we start the rollout, we would be hit by the third wave. And you've seen it's coming in a vicious way.
Yes.
So we looked at, we considered the fact that majority of the people dying, actually almost 65%, are 60 years and above. So what we've advised, and the position is, upon the receiving of the second consignment expected in early April, we are then going to prioritize those that are above 60 years of age.
Okay.
So, are we following those till now? I think that's the question now. And then there's a lot of right now. Everybody else outside of those groups is the questions are being asked on one side. When can we actually go and get vaccinated? And it seems that, everybody's not running to the needle right now, even within those groups, to go and get this done. Because I'm not sure what the current numbers are. But a couple of days ago, we're looking at about 25,000 people countrywide having been vaccinated. I'm sure that number has significantly increased by now. But still, the turnout is still quite low. What would we attribute to this?
Yeah, thank you for that question. By yesterday, we had already reached 35,000, and we are going to see a significant increase this coming week. Part of the reason is that the first week, which was the week that was 8th of March, that time we only used one hospital per county.
Yep.
And that was an introduction to the vaccine. And it is the time we were also putting in other structures and systems. Key among them is the regulatory requirement on monitoring of side effects when you are rolling out a vaccine or any health product that has emergency use authorization. We were also rolling out a digital platform to ensure accountability and the fact that we need to trace every vaccine that is issued to the vaccinee. So those were the things that were put on during the first week. So we were on the first week we did 3,000 per day on average. That's when we came with 9,000. Last week we were doing 5,000 per day, and we came with about 25,000 that week. So that's how you get to almost 35,000 now.
Okay. Why do you?
Yeah, and then let me quickly mention that now from this week, you'll see a lot of the private hospitals now can access the vaccine, the mission hospitals. We are gradually going to actually enlist over 620 facilities. So you are now going to start seeing a very gradual scale up in the uptake.
Okay, so does that mean that it's going to open up to the rest of the population? I mean, I know that it was specific and in terms of timelines that had been drawn and said, after a certain time, then other members of the population would get in. But if we see what we're now describing as vaccine apathy taking place now, would you then open it up and say, all right, anybody else who can come ahead and get it now?
Absolutely not. By the way, apathy, or what others call hesitancy, it is a discussion I'm hearing, but from where I sit, the demand, even among healthcare workers, frontline health workers, is encouraging. They are coming. Of course, we are not going to force anybody. It remains voluntary. But from where I sit, I can tell you we've started seeing the uptake.
When you say that you are now expanding the rollout, apart from you telling us, is there any other forum where the government or the group that you represent or head have actually come out and publicly told people, this is our plan, this is what we want to do? We start with the referral hospitals, then we move to this. Have we rolled out specifically and made it public?
Absolutely. One of the things you need to be cognizant is that Kenya is a devolved system, and our engagement with the county government is so crucial because they are the ones actually conducting the vaccinations. So a lot of our engagement has been with the county government. We discussed the plan with them. We disseminated the deployment plan. We've again met so many sectors, the private sector. We've disseminated that. We've met the medical associations and the academia. Really, for me, like the last 1 month, we've been all over the place, specifically making presentations on the plan and sharing the same plan.
You know, the question that comes is with regards to actual rollout of the information and the communication. At the beginning of the rollout, we were speaking with doctors' unions, and they were saying that many of their members were not aware of where to get the vaccine and how to get the vaccine. Is that still the same up to now? Because we were talking to them last week, and they were saying, what we are getting is information that is just trickling down to us, not proper communication channel that says, this is what is going to happen in this particular county. You shall receive your vaccine on a certain date, or you shall go to this particular center. Even now, with the increase and addition of the mission hospitals, the 620, do people know that from day X, we shall have vaccines available in certain hospital, and therefore the people who work around this area can come from this day? Do they know that?
Oh, okay. Yes. First and foremost, as I said, the vaccination is actually occurring in the counties. So for us, we approved 622 counties that were listed by these counties. Now, the counties are the ones that are conducting the trainings, and they are the ones that are going to inform, because in the first phase, we are really targeting, as you are saying, healthcare workers, the teachers, the security officers, and as I've said, also the clergy. So every county will, as it opens a center, it will be indicating. However, in our digital platform, we are calling it Tinge Kenya. Immediately the county now opens a facility, we are going to identify that facility, and we are hoping that in the coming week. Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
In the coming week, we are going to start what we are calling a self-registration module. So we are going to share a portal, hopefully by the end of this week, and healthcare workers and people targeted, you now don't need just to go and work. You are going to schedule your appointment. You will say when you want to go, morning or afternoon, and the date and the facility.
So what happens in terms of communication when folks are getting this vaccination? You go in, you get the vaccination. Obviously, a second dose is required. What happens after you get the vaccination? And then in terms of information of what you're to do after that? Or even for, just having a record that you actually took the vaccine?
Yes. Immediately after the vaccination, you'll be observed for 15 minutes. It's a requirement so that if there's any reaction, it is addressed at the facility where you've taken. Now, and immediately after that, you'll get a message, a text message from a system. You'll hear Tinge Kenya, powered by Ministry of Health. It will tell you the batch number, and it ends there. However, at 1 week to the second dose, you'll get another message reminding you of your second dose.
Okay.
1 week before and a day before.
Okay. Now, I think also as these things happen, maybe we can also assist to show that maybe if there's a kink here or there so that you can show how it works. So CT had the vaccine done last week. And maybe he can tell what his experience was based on what you've said now in terms of what ought to happen when you get this vaccination done. And I don't know if CT received any of this information.
Well, what I found was a very organized setup, because I went to Mbagathi Hospital, where you registered. There were multiple points at which you could actually register. It was clear. I mean, there were people who seemed to be in a hurry more than others. That's normal with Kenyans, people who are allergic to queuing. But the queues moved very swiftly. The records were taken. I produced my Camry identity, and I was told, no, they required my national ID. Okay, they took my details, and then I was told, now go and queue in that other tent. It was procedural.
So what information are they taking? Your name, your date of birth?
They took my name, date of birth, my marital status, my next of kin, my email address, my telephone number.
Okay.
All those details were taken.
Okay.
All right.
Yes. Then I proceeded to the tent. Again, I found multiple points at which people were being vaccinated. And the queue, good camaraderie among the people who were waiting, people who clearly have a phobia for injections were present in large numbers. And the conversation continued, and we were vaccinated. They talked to us, and that was that.
And then you left.
Then I left. The 15 minutes that the good doctor speaks of was not mentioned, but people received the vaccination and hung around for a while. No one was asking you to leave in a hurry.
So a number of questions that I'm going to ask you. Question number one.
Yes.
As they took your details, were you given any card, anything?
No.
Chanjo card?
No.
Okay. Number two, have you received an SMS that you should be receiving, like
No.
Dr. Hawale is saying?
No.
Okay. Number three, were you told, in case these are the likely side effects that you could feel, and in case you feel this is where you can report? Do you have any information on that?
No.
Okay. Dr. Hawale.
Yes. Yeah, I've listened. I know Bagadi was very busy last week. And I know a lot of data it was taking time to feed the data into the Chanjo system. And if someone has not got that message, they should be expecting it this week. Immediately it is entered into the system.
Okay.
The issue of crowding, something we want to minimize, and that's why we are opening more centers, so that the issue of being observed is done in an orderly manner.
How about the issue of, like you said, it's very important that that even you as your task force are able to collect information on any possible side effects that could be emanating from the community. So if the people don't know what to do, how do you get that information? Or what's the plan?
The plan is, as you get vaccinated, the reason there's two things. One, you will be advised that you can report directly to the healthcare worker at the vaccination post, or if you are at home and you become indisposed for whatever reason, that's why you have a next of kin, so that they can pass that information to the post. And the healthcare workers, upon receiving such a report, they are reporting, a digital reporting system that is linked to the Pharmacy and Poisons Board. And the Pharmacy and Poisons Board will get all these reports. By last week, they had got almost 50 reports. The reports really is where you think the side effect is much more than you would have been told, because you'll be told you may experience pain at the site, you may experience some headache, but if you feel it is so severe, then you report. Now, these reports are then analyzed by the Pharmacy and Poisons Board, and then after that, they are presented to a certain committee known as the Immunization Technical Safety Advisory Group. They are the ones who then look and say which of these may warrant an investigation.
One of the things that I must say about this process is that even if there had been information available, the truth of the matter is that the initial stages are usually an informative stage where you are trying to test the system. And this is why I believe you start with one particular point of vaccination, then you move out. You want to see how this system works out before you can actually now, should I say, go full throttle. Because even when it comes to what I'm saying, it's called feedback. I'm actually giving feedback, and Dr. Alwale and his team will understand. Okay, so this is what's happening. They will know what to do. You know, you can't have someone telling everybody, okay, wait 15 minutes, but you can have an announcement. So you at intervals, you announce when this happens, so everybody gets to hear it, and then you keep quiet. You give it another 10 minutes or 15, and you announce it again. But if I'm to go by just the processes and what I saw, it was actually a very efficient system. It was actually a very, very efficient system. I was actually amazed at the speed with which everything just took place. Yes, and the professional way in which the health workers handle this whole process.
Yeah.
Yes. What I wish the ministry had is something that I saw when I went to have when I got tested for COVID. Okay, I only wish that we had a system where the information, you fill a form and the information is immediately transferred into...
It's digitized immediately.
Immediately, because one of the things you found with the testing is that they tell you 24 hours to 48 to 24 hours or 24 to 48 hours, you get a report, you do get a report.
Yeah.
They do send it to you.
Yeah.
Because if the ministry had that, it would make their life so much easier.
I think what I'd like also to say, because I have visited some of these centers and seeing what they're doing, is Dr. Huale's team have come up with proper and structured flow of how things should work.
Yes.
The kink here is in the implementation phase and how to make sure that what is on paper is actually being practiced. Because you see all those things that Dr. Huale is saying. For example, capturing of the data, making sure that everybody who comes here is aware that this is what's supposed to happen next. These are things that can be done.
Yes.
But they are not happening as well as they should be. Now, if you increase this number, you bring an extra 620 facilities around the country, you basically are saying that you're likely to have 50% of these not doing what they're supposed to be doing. What Dr. Huale is sitting waiting for information to come up to the top to him, it's not being gathered, collected at the front, on the ground. How can you ensure that what you have on paper, what your team burnt the midnight oil to make sure is happening, actually happens on the ground?
Yeah, of course, we have trained what we are calling national master trainers, and we also train the county trainer of trainers. And these are the people who are going to really conduct the supervision and support supervision, randomly going to facilities to see what is happening. You are very right, especially in the initial stages, things will not be the same. But also as a task force, we've put certain requirements for you to really access the vaccines. And one of the requirements is that the vaccinators must have undergone the training that we are offering. I know that is what has delayed a little bit of the massive rollout. We've insisted on that. Secondly, we have this system, Chanjo system. You can actually use any computer to have it. So any facility must have that computer. But we also know some facilities are in remote areas, and we've worked with other departments in government to provide them with pads that they are using. So for us, yes, and I really agree, there are going to be those challenges. We are getting continuous feedback. We are supporting. We have subcommittees below my task force. And when any of the issues comes, we are able to assign it to a subcommittee to quickly work with the county leadership.
Dr. Huale, we want to thank you very much for speaking to us this morning and telling us what is supposed to be happening and what is happening. And as this rollout continues, we wish to reach out to you in coming days so we can just be getting these periodic updates and also to inform the people what they should be expecting.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure, and I'll always be happy to give information. You are going to see a ramp-up of communication messages.
Okay.
Kenyans just need to be patient and maybe appreciate that, you see, vaccines were not readily available. And by the time we were told they are going to land, we had around 72 hours to really prepare ourselves and get this rollout. So I believe we've done a good job. It will only get better.
Asante sana. Asante sana. Dr. Willis Ahwale is the chairman of the Vaccine Rollout Task Force. This is Kenya's biggest conversation, The Situation Room. It's now 8 o'clock. Good morning.
Sugar
spice up your life. 102.5 Spice FM, Kisumu. Traffic.
All right, so there's some traffic that's spilling onto the main road today, coming from the Syokimau area right around Mabati Rolling Mills is having some issues this morning, so it's very, very slow. Then on Mombasa Road going out towards Cabanas, that's where we have one hiccup at least this morning. Kiambu Road is slow. We're looking then heading towards Thika, also another issue today, right around the Thika Naivasha Road. There's been an accident there and trying to sort that out. It looks like a fatal one. So if you're heading in that direction, just be aware that that is what lies ahead. So the Nairobi-Mombasa Intercounty SGR train has been stranded for an hour now. No explanation from the crew. Passengers are demanding for an explanation. And guess where they are? Stuck on the train. They can't exactly get out and take a bus because they're in the middle of nowhere right now. So hopefully some information about that will be given. So we're seeing a little bit of issues on Thika Road, a little bit of Mombasa Road, and then, yes, in the middle of nowhere where the train is stuck. Those are where we're seeing some issues this morning. We'll have a look in a bit. Let us know also if you might be stuck anywhere. SpiceFM KE on Twitter. Text us on 40127 this morning, and let's see how we can keep things moving this Monday morning.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
It's 4 minutes after 8 o'clock. This is Kenya's biggest conversation, The Situation Room. Don't worry. An inside joke here. City Muga, today's proverb.
When a once beautiful piece of cloth turns to rags, no one remembers that it was woven by Ukwe master weavers.
No one remembers that it was woven by
Ukwe
Ukwe
master weavers.
Hey, okay.
You know, this is the beauty of legacies. You see, that this can be mentioned means there is a historical relevance to the art that this particular group of people represented.
Yep.
And it spanned over a long period of time and it's still in existence.
Yes.
But of significance is how easy it is for human beings to actually lose sight of that significance.
Right.
When time has done its thing, and that particular piece of cloth, which represents a whole world of cloths, or a whole world of culture that these people have represented, it is the thing that we human beings do well.
Forget.
Yes. Here we are talking about vaccines. You can't talk about vaccines if there's nothing that requires that vaccination. We know about this.
Yes.
We must encourage our health workers. We must support those who are in charge, but they should work at doing better at every stage.
Listening to Dr. Ahwale, and that's why I can't really fault him, although at the same time, I must also fault him.
Yes.
So I can't fault him because they were given a job, they were told, look, we are going to have vaccines coming into the country. What's the best way for us to roll out this vaccine? To make sure that everybody gets vaccinated. And they sat back and they thought, let's start with the most vulnerable. And those are the people who are in the front line. Those on the front line, healthcare workers, security, teachers, because we have millions of learners in schools, those ones, let's start with them. Strategy? Okay. Then after that, we shall go into the 50 plus. Then we shall go into... That was okay. On paper, looks very good. And then, so what is it that is required? We shall then now start training people to the information that is required to pass out during the vaccination. You're not training nurses on how to inject someone.
No.
They know.
They already know that. So the training here is, what information must I have? What information should I pass out to the people? That's it. So they came up with this whole program of the training of trainers. So training of trainers is bringing people from across the country, X number of people per county, to come to become the training of trainers. Then, of course, that should be followed by those training of trainers going to train, right? The trainers going to train other people below them. And that information should be the same consistently. If we have a platform that's a digital platform that is being used, you'd have expected that the data being captured is being captured directly onto the digital platform. It is now being captured manually, right? And then it shall be transferred from this manual into the digital platform. And from that digital platform, that's when you shall receive your SMS. So when you look at now more people going to Mbagathi on the day that you went, it is the reason why throughout the weekend up to now, 8 a.m. on Monday, you still haven't received your SMS telling you, CT, you're in the system that you have been vaccinated. Now imagine if we roll it out now and ramp up 620 new mission hospitals,
in the same
plus
mess.
the others, plus everybody
In
else.
the same
you shall be
way.
receiving your message of your first vaccination in August. 4 months after you received the vaccination.
You know the real danger.
After you receive the
the
second
real
one.
danger here, Eric, is the information that you need a second vaccination, isn't it?
Yes.
But after a certain period of time. Now, where information becomes crucial, somebody will decide, since I received it, why don't I just go and get a second one instead of waiting for a week?
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I need two. Why am I waiting
need
2
to,
weeks?
So
I've got the first one. I'm okay.
Tomorrow I go.
I go, and you see, you cannot tell if this person is coming for the second time.
Because you don't have the information automated, and this is an issue. I think we should also, beyond just saying that it needs to be organized in a certain way, I think we need to look at the dangers of it not being organized in a certain way.
Actually,
because there's a reason why they say, I'm assuming, come after a certain period of time to get the second dose. There's a reason why. If it was okay to get one in rapid succession of the other, then you would have just done it and said, come after 12 hours, right? There's a reason why they tell you to come after so many, weeks, right? There's a reason why they tell you to do that. Now, taking into consideration the dangers that lie therein of individuals who might just say, okay, well, I took one, I'm okay, I need to get a second one. Why don't I just trot along and do that? I think that's why you need to share the information. And just as you're talking about, okay, say you take down this information manually, then you're going to put it into a system.
Then you transfer it.
And then the system is then going to generate this information and then send you a message. Why not put it into the system immediately? And I'm sorry, but the mechanisms required to do this exist. And it's not going to cost a whole lot to get it done.
Let me tell you.
It was done. It's done all the time. Every time you have to go and do something to do with your identification, for example, NHIF, NSSF, it's all automated. Why would it be so difficult to input this into an already existing system?
All you do is throw in something called a biometric system. Not expensive. In all honesty, not expensive.
Existing in the country already.
Yes, because this one, direct thumbprint.
Finish.
Direct
it pulls up
details,
all your information.
Direct.
Then what
direct,
you would need to
direct.
do, I mean, in the back end is maybe add one or two tabs in terms of what's needed for this vaccine. Because all that other information is there. Your next of kin, your date of birth, all this other information is there. If there's anything else you need, it would be your next date for the vaccination. Add that as a tab, and it's something that is then uniform across board, and it's automated, and an SMS is sent to you. We talk about these things as if it's rocket science, but really, it's actually something simple that can be done.
This thing is not complicated.
It really is not.
And not only the technology available locally, but we also have the human resource that knows how to manage that thing. We do. And even in our hospitals, you will have people who are in the departments that are supposed to handle and manage these things. And yet, when it comes to this rollout, you're asking, so these people, I know they exist. Where are they?
You see, so when you've been to a hospital in this country, public or private, 10 years ago, right? 5 years, okay, a month ago, and you went back today, they would be able to trace and say, well, you came in a month ago because why? Because this information is on record. So it's actually possible with existing systems to actually have this done. And unfortunately, I see there's a potential mess here, because if you don't receive the info, if you don't receive your first message, how then are you going to be able to go and prove that you got your first vaccination when it's time for you to get the next one? When it's time for you to get the second dose.
An SMS is also not really a big proof, eh?
No, it's not proof, but at least...
Because you can go with somebody else's phone.
But I mean, it's okay. So if you don't have a certificate or even a card, something that was ticked, something to show that you got. Because now, City, how are you going to prove today, as you are now, how are you going to prove to anybody that you got it?
How am I going to prove to the system?
Yes.
Yeah, that you got it.
Because if I present them myself today, how will they know that I was there on Friday? How will they know?
How?
They won't. They won't.
Let's say you had to travel to a country that needed you to have proof that you've been vaccinated. There's some countries right now that are rolling out what they're calling the COVID passport, right?
Yes.
If you needed that today, emergency something came up, you needed to travel to this particular country, what would you do?
I would actually not be able to travel because I would not be able to prove. It's not really complicated. And yet, you see, the discussion isn't one for fault finding.
No, it isn't.
The discussion is for giving feedback.
Absolutely.
All these things we keep talking about, these are things which when we have a situation such as this one, you implement. A biometric system is not something that is alien to this country. Our electoral system had a biometric system. God alone knows what happens to that biometric system, but it's not that we didn't have it. We do have it. And by the way, when people tell you it's complicated, it is not complicated.
Okay. But I think the confusing thing then now here would be that there are certain places in the country where it's all right and not. I received a message just now from Honorable Shakil Shabir, and he says to me, I took the vaccine 1 week ago in Kisumu. The information was inputted, and so there was a machine apparently where he went to register, and I got the notification by SMS and a written certificate noting next date of the second dose. Kisumu's organized, he says.
There's a written certificate.
Yes, he got a written certificate after he got the vaccination, and the information as he was registering was put into a machine, and he got the SMS.
Why don't I just state it? The hospital where many of these things were being rolled out, what it means, it had that mechanism, it had that system, and they were implementing it.
I can also tell you something. There were few people. By the time Honorable Shakil Shabir was getting, must have been the first batch of people when it was being rolled out in Kisumu.
Yes. Yeah.
Those that also got it at MOH, at the Afya House, Ministry of Health headquarters, have also reported saying, yeah, I got vaccinated.
Sure.
I went writing down the data, and then later I got my SMS.
But we also
because
know
it's
that
few
center
people.
was shut down because everybody then was going there.
It's a few people, so it's quite easy for them. After we close down, then you go and input the data onto the digital platform. Increase that number of people exponentially, times 10. It's going to take you a lot more time to actually digitize the data and then start sending out the SMSs. That is where the issue comes in.
That's the problem.
That's where the issues start coming in, because now who's coming, who's receiving, whose data is going where, how do we capture this data, how do we send out this information? This is where the issues start rolling out. The reason also why people who are not in any of those categories, healthcare, security, teachers, have also gotten vaccinated. Somebody has gone there and asked, so your workers are what? And they say, I'm a teacher. And they get the vaccine.
You know, nobody's asking you to produce evidence that you're a teacher.
In some cases, they're asking you, let me see the evidence, your job identification. In other cases, they're not.
I actually liked the idea that they were taking you at your word. I liked it. You present yourself. What they want is a formal identification, national ID preferably, or if you're an alien identification.
Yeah.
I like that. It means they were not shutting anybody out. That is good. However, there is the problem of ensuring that those who the protocol dictates must have that service first may not necessarily be the ones who actually have it first. But again, early days yet, in this sense, whenever you roll out something of this sort, there'll be kinks. Guarantee there'll be kinks.
Some kinks, City, I'll stop you there. Some kinks are acceptable. They're within the margin of error. Some kinks are deliberate error.
Please talk a little bit more about this.
I'll tell you why. So, you are starting to roll out the vaccination, okay? And this is what you've trained your trainers to go and train others to do. And you've told them, when people come, this is how you shall capture their data. This is how you shall communicate with them afterwards. And then this is how you shall tell them, if you develop some symptoms, this and the other, this is how we're going. It's very simple. If this is not happening on the ground, it shows you that there's a breakdown somewhere between the people who have come up with this plan and those people who are implementing the plan. And that's this is not a kink.
True.
This is somebody not doing their job somewhere. A kink could be that this is what was expected to happen, but because now, for example, we were supposed to use this digital platform to capture the data, and then there was no power, now there's a delay because of this and the other. That's something.
Those are unavoidable circumstances.
If you have not been told, CT, you went, you got vaccinated, and you are not told, so what happens next?
Actually, it would be a bit of a problem. You know, when we talk about COVID and the vaccine related to it, we more or less we sound as though this vaccination is nothing mysterious. We've been vaccinating in this country for the longest possible time.
Yes.
There's nothing new about vaccine. Every year, the Ministry of Health rolls out vaccinations.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And people are used to vaccines. And that's why Dr. Ahwale is saying the demand is high. Because people...
It's not strange to us. It's not. And as for people being trained to vaccinate, it's equally not strange.
It really isn't.
No.
It really isn't.
No.
We're not talking about something there that was totally new. It's just adding to what was already there, which for me is all the more reason why it shouldn't be as complicated as it is at this moment.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be, by virtue of the fact that it's something that the country is used to on a regular basis. I mean, you go take your kids now, for example, to hospital, and the doctors are going to be asking you, have you had your flu vaccine? For example, you need to give it to your children on a regular basis. So everybody's aware that these things need to be happening and the manner in which they need to be done. That's why, for me, it should not be so complicated, some of the things that we are seeing now. If there's no power, there's no internet to upload the system, then I can say, okay, fine, that we'll deal with those circumstantial issues as we go along. But the fundamental issues whereby somebody's not getting the information that they require, then that's a problem. And then now, like he said, you want to add 650 centers to the already existing semi-mess. What do you think is going to happen?
Actually, I know what's going to happen. I don't even need... I know exactly what is going to happen, because this is where now you'll have even mixed results.
It'll be shambolic. Yeah. People will go, they'll get vaccinated, and
that'll be it. And as for
and
the
you
second...
have no way to prove that you did.
We have 1 million doses in the country, right?
Yes.
So ideally, with this 1 million doses, we should be vaccinating 500,000
people.
You'll see, 700,000 people will get this first.
We'll get the first one. And then we'll say...
So it'll not be enough to cover
the second round, the second dose for the initial 500,000 people.
Yes. Because it isn't as though the second dosage is a different one. Same one.
Same one. It's
yes,
yet to come.
You're just getting it twice.
Yeah.
Some people will get it, some others will not.
You know how it is that certain positions that you take or decisions that you make on behalf of others and how the consequences roll out. Some consequences are not difficult to figure out. You can tell, all right? Again, if we don't act swiftly and we don't take very stringent steps, some of these things are going to catch up with us. Things which need not catch up with us adversely. You see, good decision making and good consequence can also catch up with you, meaning you prepared well. Remember the initial stages and the lockdowns. Good decisions. And they held us in good stead for some time. Then it went to wherever these things tend to go negatively. All right?
The dogs.
Precisely. Okay. So that's giving a dog a bad name, really. So we are now talking about the consequences we're now dealing with, the doubts and the suspicions that have arisen as a result of not maintaining that tempo that we had before.
I think once we look at it also, it's because, for me, where it comes from, it's not just taking a stick to an issue and saying, pointing out the fault over and over. It is because you see that things like this have been done before and done excellently well. It can happen. And so then when you see one that is met with some of the issues that we are seeing, and you're saying it doesn't need to be the case. It doesn't need to be the case. I mean, we've seen it as is, the world in which we live in now. Look at countries around the globe where somebody gets a vaccine and they have the little certificate already stating that, have taken it. It is not difficult to get it done. And then some of the things that we hear about now, everybody's saying, well, okay, I want to be protected, but then I know that I'm not in the category of those people right now who are being put out in the front line, right? But then we also hear that, okay, some people might be more privileged to have the vaccine even brought to them and things like that happening. Throughout all of this, that's when now you get the doubt that has been sown in the minds of some people today.
It would be because it's a carryover. It's, again, consequences. When you have a situation where there's a basic mistrust that people have with their government, just that entity called government, then mistrust that is then allocated and distributed quite evenly across the various ministries, and the Ministry of Health taking a big chunk of this mistrust. Even when you then say something, it isn't a question of saying it. You must put in an infinitely greater effort in ensuring that people actually are convinced.
Sure.
And the rollout is a good point because we are seeing it happening. It's not a story. It is a reality. And if I go by what I saw, anyone who presented themselves, believe me, Kenyans of all walks of life were being presented.
Because they felt they could go and try their chance and see if they could get
And
it.
everyone who was, I did not see anybody being told, go away, you can't be vaccinated.
You know, the most concerning bit of all this for me is there are senior government officials who listen to this show and they're like, now they're listening to this conversation and they get very pissed off because they're thinking, you guys think things are working.
No, they're not. That's not the point.
Things are working. Just because you have a few isolated cases here and there, it doesn't mean that this thing is not going well.
No.
And we'll remind them, we had this conversation when they rolled out compulsory quarantine last year, around this time last year. Compulsory quarantine. How did that go?
A mess.
Issues. We basically turned quarantine centers into petri dishes.
Yes.
Higher. We talked about the lockdown. How was that lockdown being managed? Issues. Same. And it's not because of people not knowing what they're supposed to do. It's just that somebody knows what they're supposed to do. They're not doing it.
Quarantine became business. Suddenly quarantine centers became profit centers. And you ask yourself, God on earth.
What on
surely,
earth is going on
what
here?
on earth is
What
going
on
on?
earth is this? As we talk today now, and we're moving along the conversation, we are in the throes of a third wave, okay? Where we are just getting all these reports. How many people are in ICU? According to the latest figures, more than 100 people in ICUs for COVID alone.
123.
By the time we were talking about with Colonel Cyrus Oguna, the government spokesman, we were saying, look, guys, when you have 90 people in ICU because of one condition, not everything, just one condition, putting 90 people in ICU, this is a big thing. Now we have 30 more.
This is in addition to the other conditions that put
Everything
people
else that
put
takes people to ICUs.
So
this one has 123 people in ICU. This is a big deal.
Let's take a little bit further than that because then not just do you have people in ICU beds, you still have people queuing to get into the same beds.
Yes.
People who have conditions for which you need to be on a ventilator, you need to be in that intensive care. Otherwise, you will die. So we have queues of people in major Nairobi hospitals. Let's just look at Nairobi for a minute. Because then I shudder to think about what's happening outside of Nairobi in other counties whereby we know the total count for a county, for example, is 5 ICU beds available. Right? So if people are queuing and you already have 124 countrywide, what is going to happen? We're not looking at a crisis unfolding. We're in the middle of it. We're in the middle of the storm right now.
Right there.
Because 123 people in ICU beds, they're full to capacity. You have people who are coming to hospital with symptoms that require them to be in ICU. They cannot get there. For a moment, what are they going to get? They're going to get the oxygen pipe while they wait. While, unfortunately, if somebody passes on from an ICU bed or heals, is the only time they will get an opportunity to get in there. We're not looking at an almost bad situation. We're looking at a storm. And we're in the storm right now. And it would sound like a waste of time or picking at an already sore wound when you say that we should have been prepared. But the truth of the matter is, folks, we should have been prepared.
You know, the total number of ICU beds in this country, if I'm talking about the 2020 data, was 537. They may have increased to 600. They may even have gotten to 700. May have.
Yes.
The whole country.
Imagine.
50 million people. Now, you tell me, if you have the situation such as the one that you have, and by the bulk of these ICU beds are in Nairobi, not anywhere else. So what happens to other people around the country?
People are being transferred from other hospitals around the country, being brought to Nairobi.
In hope that they'll
you
find a
come
bed
to
when
Nairobi,
they get
and then you're told, okay, we have no facility around, so you're being taken out to other areas outside Nairobi. And we're going to open up the phone line 0719012600. So hear people who have experiences on this, because I'm sure there are people who are listening and they have actually had this experience of trying to get a bed for their loved one for COVID-19, just a bed, isolation facility, just to get treatment, get the supplementary oxygen. They are not getting supplemental oxygen because facilities are full. People who require them to go into an ICU, and you sit for days hoping against hope that there will be space in an ICU facility. And by that, we are talking about either somebody recovering and getting out of ICU, or somebody dying and getting out of ICU, so that you can create space in that ICU. Because it's either of those two.
If they get better or they die.
Yes.
Yes.
And you're there in hoping that, God, can you just create for me space in ICU so that my person can go to ICU? And that's already what's happening now.
You know, there are counties in this country that have 0 bed capacity for ICU. Zero. And I can even mention them for you. They don't have, okay? Kilifi. Lamu.
Sorry, what's this?
0 means what? 0 means never had, or 0 means full,
The county,
none
the
available?
hospitals there that have ICU beds, you come up 0.
Good Lord. Okay.
Tana River. Wajir. Mandera. Marsabit. Isiolo. Tharaka. And the list goes on. Now you tell me, other places have quite a number. You'll find 20. If you have a county that has a referral hospital or a teaching and referral hospital, they will have
ICU beds.
Yes, exactly. Now, Wasingishu, which has Moi Teaching and Referral Hospital, has 20. Okay. COVID brings out disparities that have always existed, but now they are glaring because of the need. We've known all along ICU beds exist, but the need for this great need for ICU beds has not existed. Now, along with ICU beds, you find there's need for ventilators because of what? COVID.
Yep.
So now, some of the hospitals that are able to take in patients, they may not have ICU beds, but they have ventilators.
Yeah.
We have known we have COVID. This same government through the ministry understood this and even set aside money to help counties expand their capacity. They did. And that one must be spoken of. They did.
They set aside the money, or they expanded the capacity?
They gave, it's a devolved function.
Okay.
5 billion shillings, money was given to counties, expand your capacity. Now, we know how that story went, didn't we? Some saying, okay, even if we expand, where are we going to take these beds? Others, it was a long, convoluted story that ended up in great sadness, because the business as usual with the way we handle such things, now we have a crisis because the things that needed to have been done, national government can't be blamed here. On this one, they took out the money, they gave it to the counties.
So that's why the folks who are saying, Eric,
was it
that,
enough?
No, that's why the folks who are saying that they're upset because things are happening. You should actually be upset. You should be a little bit more upset, because the fact that something could have been done, preparation was made for it to boost this something that could have been done, and then you didn't do it. You should be very, very upset. You should actually be very upset.
Eric, you say, was it enough? I'm saying no, because had these counties done what they were supposed to do, and we still found there was need for more, then we would say it isn't enough. But if you didn't
do it,
how do we even begin to determine whether it was enough or wasn't? Because what you're supposed to do to begin with, you didn't. I'm sure if we were to talk to our friend John in Nyandara, we'd tell you those beds which were borrowed from some of the health facilities, and
they never came back.
Yes, exactly. So, was the capacity expanded? No. How do you deny one particular health facility the capacity it has, so that you can give a false impression that you have the capacity at the big referral health facility? I mean, come on, this is nonsense.
It's 8:30. Let's take a break, see what's happening on the roads, and also look at the weather forecast for Nairobi, other major cities and towns in the country and across the world. And then we open up the phone line, 0719-012-600. We are in the third wave of COVID-19. Hospitals are getting full. No capacity, no space available in very many facilities in Nairobi and around the country. But we want you to tell us the story. Your own personal experience. If you have somebody, a friend, a relative who's had to go to hospital and not found space, you can tell us, even without mentioning the hospital that you went to, but just telling us you went to this hospital and this is the experience that you had, so that all of us can get to understand what is the situation kwa ground. Good morning.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life.
Have you seen them? Am I lying?
Yes, it's a very nice outfit, I must say. Good
Thank
job.
you. Asante sana.
The compliment is well received.
Good morning and thank you. Everyone was was asking me what channel is SpiceFM.
96.7. Tell them that, right?
Yes, now they know.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Pleasure to have
What
you.
a beautiful studio, my friend.
I've been to other radio stations, but I've never seen anything like this.
Thank you, and it's very nice to be in a modern studio. Absolutely brilliant.
And I have to say, it's a very cool ambiance here in your radio room. Just for our listeners, I think it is below zero in this room here. Very Swiss temperatures.
All right. Mostly cloudy conditions in Nairobi this morning. It got highs of 26 and lows of 17. It's cloudy in Nyeri at 16, highs of 25 and lows of 14. 14 will also be the low in Nakuru, where it's partly sunny at 16. Mostly cloudy conditions in Eldoret at 17 degrees, going to highs of 25 and lows of 14 today. Partly sunny in Kisumu at 21, highs of 30 and lows of 20. 16 will be the low in Kakamega today. It's partly cloudy at 22. Partly sunny conditions in Mombasa 28. The rains have stopped for now. Highs of 33 and lows of 26. Sunny conditions in Malindi at 28, highs of 33 as well. 26 will be the high in Kampala. It's partly sunny at 20. It continues to rain in Dar es Salaam at 27. We'll see highs of 32 today. We'll see highs of 23 in Johannesburg, where it's cloudy at 16. Continues to rain in Lagos at 27, highs of 30. 27 will be the low. It's sunny in Kinshasa, a chance of rain later with highs of 32 and lows of 24.
Are you ready? Okay.
Spice FM. Traffic.
All right, things seem to have gotten crazy on Mombasa Road. So now that turning as you're trying to come from GM doesn't exist anymore, right? And everybody's asking for an opportunity to at least turn and go to Enterprise Road. It's not happening right now. At a standstill, in and outbound on Mombasa Road. And around 8:30, it's looking like it's going to be crazy until about 10. This one, you have to sit tight, folks, until the cops decide to do something about that. Hopefully they can open up that turning and get people to move, right? Terrible accident just outside Ngong Town. Drive with care as you head in that direction. It looks like a crazy one, guys. Also outbound on Gong Road as you're trying to get towards the city at the city's mortuary roundabout. Coming from Bagavi Way, joining Valley Road. It's slow, but it's moving not too crazily. Huru Highway is moving all the way from Nyayo Stadium through to Westlands. Slow, but it's moving. And let's try keep it that way, guys. Let us know if anything stops you. SpiceFMKE on Twitter. Text on 40127.
Spice FM. Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice
We're
FM,
talking about
Nairobi.
25 minutes to 9. We're talking about COVID-19, the third wave, and what's happening in the country. CT, I got a message from Senator Sylvia Kasanga, who says, remember she chaired the ad hoc committee on COVID-19 in the Senate. She says Kilifi currently has 21 ICU beds, and this is part of what they did with the money that they got for capacity building from COVID funds. All counties were supposed to get some, so Kilifi improved and they got to 21 ICU beds. Remember, they actually went and refurbished an entire facility and made it a COVID facility.
They refurbished 21 ICU beds. That is what they have on paper. They actually have it.
That's what they have. 21 ICU beds.
So is it the Kilifi hospital or is it hospitals around
County.
Kilifi? The entire county?
Yeah, Kilifi County.
Well, I need evidence.
You need to see.
Well, yes, I do. I need further corroboration. The reason why I'm saying this is, you see, for instance, you will find a place like Bungoma, where you have the ICU beds, is in a hospital called Bungoma Life Care. Okay? Now, it sounds to me like a private facility.
The senator says she's seen the beds.
Then if she's seen the beds, then they exist.
Okay.
Yes.
Let's go to Honorable Shakil Shabir, who also was listening into the show, and he's telling us his experience with getting the vaccine and the information sharing. Good morning, Mheshimiwa.
Morning. Good morning to you.
Good morning, and thank you very much for joining us this morning. So, We are talking about this entire vaccine rollout and the third wave and the impact of the third wave. So let's first of all start with your experience with the vaccination.
Well, actually, when I went nearly 10 days ago, I was not many people there.
Right.
But the system was working very, very well.
Mm-hmm.
And the moment you went in, you went to register. They took your details. They asked you whether you were, what your profession was. If you were a doctor, they asked you for your registration number as a doctor.
Mm-hmm.
They were a teacher, they asked you whether your TSC registration number.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, they asked me, do you have a number, which I gave them? And they logged it on. And then and after that, we went to get the vaccination, and then sat down. They're telling us what's going to happen. You might have a little reaction.
Okay.
And that was it. Yes.
So this was on what day of the vaccination in Kisumu County?
This was on the third day.
The third day.
Yes, correct. Yes.
Okay. So two questions that I have for you. Question number one: how were they capturing the data? Was it on a digital platform?
On the computer. Yes, on a digital platform immediately.
Okay. Question number two.
The lady there. Yes.
When they asked you what profession you are, what did you say?
I told them I'm a member of parliament. I'm a politician.
Okay.
And there was a senior member of the team there who was monitoring. Not everybody was going to get the vaccination.
Okay.
So obviously they were asking you what you were doing, what you were there for, and then whether you were high risk or not.
Okay.
We told them. I mean, I heard people were just saying this a high risk. I remember a couple of elderly who came in.
Yeah.
And they were given the vaccination. Yes.
So some elderly
and then
people.
they give you a slip. They give a slip of paper. You see, it wasn't for me to identify who the elderly people were.
Yeah.
And but for what I saw, there was a senior guy that was hovering around, checking whether everything is going on. Everybody's coming and sitting down and doing it.
Mheshimiwa, is it okay to ask which hospital, which facility is this that you went to?
Yes, of course. The Jaramogi Odinga Memorial General Hospital. And as a matter of fact, when I asked at the time, they said we are 1,454 or something they had done.
Mm-hmm. And were they long queues? When you say everything was organized?
No, they were not long queues. It was just organized. I think, you see, the thing is, as they were coming in, somewhere along the line there was some monitoring going on, maybe at the gate or something.
Yeah.
So there was some sort of pre vetting going on.
Okay.
And generally, but there was not long lines, no.
Shabir, what I'm going to ask
and
you
they were closing at 3:30. At 3:30 they were closed.
What I'm going to ask you to do is in today and in the next couple of days, if you can send out your feelers within Kisumu County and your constituency in particular, find out whether it's happening the same way in all facilities, whether it's still as organized in all facilities. Because you see, in Nairobi, we already have cases. We have cases where people have gone to MOH. They are not in any of those categories. They've gotten the vaccine. C.T. Muga went to Mbagathi. He got the vaccine. Yes, he belongs to the category of healthcare workers, so he can receive. However, all this other information, the data was not captured on a digital platform. It was captured on paper. He has not received an SMS.
What I was surprised about, they took my ID number, and when they checked on the ID, they didn't take my name. They took my ID number. I did not show them the ID. They took my ID number, and she typed it in and said, Shakil Ahmed Shabir Ahmed. I said, yes. Yeah? So they were linked into the national
database. Wow.
They were linked into a national database. So I think it's not I think what it is perhaps it's individual. The system is there. And I even have I even have a SMS coming in and telling me this you have been done such and such.
Yeah.
So the system is there. Unfortunately, the implementation, maybe there are not enough computers, maybe there's not enough, the internet facility is not there, I don't know. But it should happen, because the way we do even voting, when we are going to vote, there are 100, 200, 100,000 people, they're voting. So in one day, so we can do this.
It's possible. It can be done.
Thank
you. Thank you very much, Shakil Shabir.
Thank you very much. I'll go and check out. Thank you. And my best regards you to undo yourself and CT.
Thank you so much, Shakil.
Thank you, Mheshimiwa.
Look forward to coming singing you again sometime. It was a great experience. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Asante sana.
Thank you so much.
Dr. Simon Kigondu, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Daktari.
Good morning, Eric.
Good morning to you.
Thank you. Your show, as usual, is very insightful. We listen to it every day. I just want to make a quick point.
Okay.
First, we must congratulate the Ministry of Health for the vaccine rollout. The vaccine is long overdue. I was number 161. So I've got my shot, and I'm waiting for April 30th to get the second shot. The second thing is that we must also congratulate our researchers, because the COVID vaccine, AstraZeneca one, part of the phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 trials were actually done in Kenya. And that's the reason we are even getting sort of like priority. Now, more importantly, is the situation we are facing of a pandemic and an inadequate health system. And some of the issues we need to address are how we, the governance vis-a-vis who are running the health system. For long, as the association, we have advocated that the governance of the health sector should be left to the health professionals. What am I saying? What am I saying is that the flow of funding and the flow of expertise is through the professionals, but the flow of money goes through a government system. So we've said we are devolved, and as City Muga has said, they have said, according to them, that, for instance, Kilifi has 21 ICU beds. But having a bed is not having the service. They don't have, for instance, an anesthesiologist. So you'll have the governance side using procurement, infrastructure, and buildings as the measure of the service. But when you come to the health, human resources for health, there are none. For instance, you have many ICUs who may not be providing, in quotes, quality care because they do not have the relevant personnel. And the only people who can actually tell you this service is good, then is the health personnel. So my point, and this for a future discussion, is that the health system, this thing we always say, oh, health is devolved, health is not devolved, is wrong. Because we do not have the right people to measure the system. Personally, yesterday night, I was looking for a COVID bed for a friend, so to speak. Why? Because there are none. And
where is this that you are looking for? In Nairobi or which county?
Nairobi, yeah. You'll find that, if I may quote, there was a referral from another county. They all refer to Nairobi. Why? Because they have maybe the beds, in quotes, but the expertise is not there. And if you ask your medical personnel, your friend, where do you get this good doctor, in quotes, you see? So that's a discussion we really need to have, because we will have many epidemics in future. And if your quality of care is not assured, then you have a problem.
Let's go back to that, what you are sharing as your experience. Last night, you were trying to get a bed, to secure a bed for a friend of yours who had been referred from another county to Nairobi.
No, not another county. The other county was previously, that we've highlighted. We highlighted some health workers who actually passed on because they have to be referred from where they had claimed there is an ICU bed to Nairobi, but in transit, they pass on. Why? Because there is no care. It's a bed. You get what I mean. But now this particular one was actually referred from another hospital that was full of, and it's COVID related, and it is full. So, of course, being a health worker, they would probably call me and ask me, what do you know? So I'd make 1 or 2 calls, find out where there is a bed or two. You see, so the situation should not be like that. The capacity should have been built over this 1 year for us to say that.
But now we should be able to handle 120 people in ICU.
The most important capacity is actually not the bed. It's the human resources for health. I'll give you maybe an example that you may need to think about. We have few neurosurgeons, yes? And we have some neurosurgeons being taken care of as COVID patients. You see? So we do not have enough capacity because now even the ones that we have are taken out. So if someone needs neurosurgical care, then the neurosurgeons have been taken out by COVID. Then we do. So this thing of saying, and maybe we'll go to the argument of wage bill, or we have too many neurosurgeons, does not apply because future pandemics will actually harm you and reduce your capacity. Therefore, we must be looking to continuously improve and distribute them well across the country.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ari.
You're welcome.
Asante sana. Jimmy in Malindi, good morning.
Good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning.
Kabisa.
Good. So, mine, I would like to give an example because if something does not happen to you but happens to your neighbor, you can also give an example of it. My brother is in Kampala. His daughter got COVID-19. And the situation there was so dangerous that I feel it's good to share with the Kenyans for them to know that if it reaches to that point, then we will have a lot of fatality. The hospital's bed becomes full. There is nobody. Everyone is waiting for the other person on a queue. People are dying. Then the government official, a commander, I think something in the army, when my brother was there, this is how it was decided. One guy who was on the bed was removed. Then this guy was put there and put on oxygen. And this guy really needed that oxygen. So you find that this army man that has been put on this bed, he lost his life. And this one who was put aside, he struggled for his life, and he got it. So, Kenyans should get warning that if you are told, take measures, because like in Kisumu County here, I don't believe if today 50 people need the ICU, then we will not have anywhere to go. So, please, people should take measures, because very soon, if we don't take measures, people will be dying in their own homes or outside the hospitals waiting for those beds in the ICU. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jimmy. So the situation is dire, as Jimmy's saying. And yes, you get to a point where, even getting to a point like we've seen in the news coming from other places around the world, where doctors have to make that decision. I have 5 patients, I have 1 ventilator. The doctor has to decide which among these 5 patients do I fix on the ventilator?
You know, the question.
It's a life and death decision that has to be made at that point by a doctor, and it's an emergency. They don't have
the luxury of time.
The luxury of time. No.
You see, what Dr. Kigondu has pointed out to is what I was alluding to when I asked, you have the beds, yes.
Yes, the 21 beds.
Fine. You've increased it. There are 21 more beds. But you see, for any unit to be referred to as an ICU, it goes beyond the bed. First of all, there's the ratio of the health worker to the patient. All right? There's the capacity to treat what ordinarily would be called an emergency or an intensive unit, which is life-threatening. Do they have that capacity? Everything else you see now, when you talk about ICU, first of all, what are you dealing with? Do they have something for the pediatrics? Do they have somebody for someone who has a surgical issue? Do they have the capacity to cater for somebody who has a neurological issue? Something that Dr. Kigondu brought up. This ICU that they say they have, what can they handle when it comes to... Because this is outside just the normal managing of, you have a hospital bed, you are unwell, you're taken to it. No. These life-threatening conditions. Is that what they're saying that they are able to do? Because the bed is available, the equipment that accompanies it Is it available? The reason why hospitals have few of these units is because they're expensive.
It is. There's a whole kit and caboodle when it comes to having to deal with
To
ICU
equip it so that
cases,
it can actually be referred to that. And alongside
Which is why I was asking, that 5 billion shillings that was rolled out and said, we're going to increase our capacity. It's increased what capacity?
The capacity we're increasing,
is it isolation centers or is it HDUs and ICUs?
It was bed capacity. The first thing that they were doing was bed capacity. That's what that money was actually intended for. Bed capacity.
Bed capacity. So you could even have increased the bed capacity by 100, right? So right now, when you get to a point where we have approaching 1,000 people on COVID alone being hospitalized, so you're already talking about stretching.
You are.
Then they now require.
Yes, but not everyone who exhibits signs of COVID infection required intensive care.
Yes.
They simply required isolation.
Yes.
Yes. Now, maybe from the isolation, if that was managed, then you would reduce the numbers of people. I think the understanding was if we have enough capacity to simply get people to be isolated, then we can contain it so that even the need for people to be taken to the ICU and HDU doesn't arise.
Doesn't come up.
Yes.
There's another call on the line. Stephen, good morning. Stephen? We lost him. He was calling in from, I don't know where, I think Nango City. I don't know where that is. So, if you remember what was happening around this time up to June, July last year, counties were talking about increasing their capacity for isolation facilities.
Yes.
For example, Machakos County came up with this field hospital at the stadium. Now, having that field hospital at the stadium means that you're basically saying you're able to have a bed and also you're able to cater for the people who come there.
Yes, you are.
So that money was going to run out.
It was.
At some point.
It was.
So you have the bed, yes, but really, can you service that bed?
Remember what the governor of Machakos told us, the disproportionate allocation that he had to make, a decision he had to make to ensure that the health provision for his citizens was actually taken.
So something had to suffer.
Yeah, he said, look, I had to ignore other aspects of the economy, but focus on health. It's what he did. One of the things I also noticed about Mbagathi, they also have an isolation unit, meaning it's like a huge white tent.
Yeah.
Meaning they also understood the need to be able to cater for people who exhibit these symptoms that we attribute to COVID infection. See, now that to me is understanding the need and taking care of it. Within Mombasa, you remember, what previously was the Technical University of Mombasa, they made sure that yes, they did, and they did an excellent job of ensuring that it was not just bed facility, but it was equipped.
Yes. So now the question is, with the reopening of schools, with everything else that happened, do we still have TUM as an isolation facility for Mombasa County?
Tricky, isn't it?
So what happened? Yes.
Tricky, isn't it?
Remember, they had also even decided to set aside some hospitals and say, if you have COVID, then these are going to be the COVID facilities.
Yes.
So that was not going to be sustainable, especially a year down the road.
No, it wasn't going to be sustainable. But you see, for it to be sustainable, at least we ought to have been talking about the capacity having been expanded. Then we have an additional conversation of how do we sustain it. But the conversation we were having was that even those beds, we were not certain that they had actually been procured. You see, this was the problem. Forget capacity, where you're building 4 walls. Well, exactly the first 4 walls are 4, the next just 3 walls. We hadn't even gotten there yet. We hadn't gone beyond that.
So we're looking at a situation where we're going to be constantly chasing after this COVID.
Unfortunately, yes.
We started out chasing after it, and a year later, we are still chasing after it and trying to just keep up and saying, okay, so what can we do? But, the thing is, I don't think anybody on the globe, maybe 1 or 2 countries, have actually caught up then, are able to have a conversation and say, okay, well, here we are at par, and we're able to fix it. New Zealand, for example, is one of those countries. Australia is another one of those countries.
Vietnam.
When they're even talking about, no necessary quarantine for inward coming travelers, things like that. They're having a different conversation, having been able to catch up with COVID. But here we are, and we're still talking about in a wave, where, by the way, people think it's the third and final wave. We don't even know that. We don't even know that.
People didn't know there would be a second wave.
They even know that there would be a second wave.
So if there's a third one, you can expect a fourth
one. So you can imagine, here we are in the throes of this, and things are like this, the manner in which they are today. And we can preach that gospel of trying to be as careful as you can be, protecting yourself and doing all that you need to do as concerns personal hygiene. But then there's also the back-end work that is absolutely necessary that needs to be done in terms of preparation and preparedness.
This virus, is a living organism. And just like we're talking about hospitals, that is our attempt to stay alive when you are unwell. This organism needs us to survive. And it fights to survive. And one of the things it does is it mutates. It changes so that even as you try to kill it, it's also trying to survive.
Yeah.
And the problem with our trying to kill it is that it also acquires new ways of dealing with whatever it is that. So that's the whole thing of mutation. Now, the reason how you nip it in the bud is you ensure you don't get it in the first place. That's what you start with. But having gotten it, keeping up with ensuring that you have the means by which to keep it at bay or to halt it, it's a never-ending struggle. What we do have, if we actually get it right, is a point at which we live with it, but it isn't as life-threatening as it is now. All these ailments that we speak of, that you say, oh, you talk about polio vaccination. There was a time this thing was a complete terror.
Yes.
I keep mentioning HIV. We don't talk about it. HIV didn't go away. We still have it with us. But the reason why it isn't alarming is because it's considered something that people understand and can be managed. Many conditions are just that they are managed. We haven't got to that stage with the COVID. This is the problem. And the manner in which it spreads is also alarming because, my friend, you really can't tell. And that's why there are all these... And the basic methods of prevention are also supposedly basic and simple. Adherence, unfortunately, isn't.
And it sounds like, just looking at what is happening, even looking at what Professor Omu Nzala is saying, look, there's a possibility that what we are witnessing now is a new variant, not the one that we even saw in wave 1 or wave 2.
Yes.
So there's also a possibility that we'll actually get more vicious as we go. So that thing of also saying, we could be out of the woods, Africa has been spared this thing, it may be premature.
It's true, but what did he say as well? That, the thing is, because of that reality, we need to vaccinate then as quickly as possible.
Chap.
You need to do it quickly because we can be sitting around here waiting and saying, okay, yeah, let's just wait, let's try and do more. But what you do is that you're putting people at risk, inadvertently putting people at risk by not vaccinating, by not allowing them to go ahead. Because if this strain is lurking, if a second, third one is lurking, and people get infected with that, what are you going to do? Whereas you could have put up a first line of defense, at the very least, towards this.
Keep it right here, and we'd like to hear from you in coming days as well on what's happening with COVID-19 in your hood. Just like we've heard Dr. Kigondu saying, getting to a point where you're trying to secure a bed for a loved one, and you're going around the city, you can't. You're going around the country, you can't. So this is something that's happening, and these stories need to be told. These stories also need to be told of some people's experience. If you've been to hospital and you've come out and you have survived COVID-19, there are very many people who think that this thing is a joke. And those that have gone through it are saying it's not a joke. We'd also like, in coming days, to hear from you. Keep it right here. In the next hour, we talk about security and, looking at policing and what kind of qualities that we require for our police service. This is a reasoned conversation and a reasoned debate. Our police officers, those people who got C- and below. So, are they the right people to be the enforcers of law and order? Hey, good morning. It's 9 o'clock.
Spice up your life. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
All right, so still some slow movement on Mombasa Road this morning, past the SGR and then headed out towards Cabana. So it's going to take some time to get out of this one today. Very, very slow. Also inbound is some slowing down of traffic right on Airtel as well. The Likoni interchange also bringing out some traffic this morning. Other parts of the city not too bad as this Monday morning. It's flowing smoothly. Flowing on Thika Road, a bit slow, but it's not as slow as it is on normal days. So we see a whole loosening up of traffic. Let's keep an eye on it and see how it continues to open up, shall we? Talk to us if you need to. SpiceFM KE on Twitter. Let's see how we can get that traffic situation moving in your neck of the woods. Text as well on 40127.
This is The Situation Room the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
2.5 minutes after 9. This is Kenya's biggest conversation, the Situation Room. Thank you very much for joining us. This is the fourth hour of the show. We begin the show at 6 a.m. every weekday morning up to 10 a.m. C.T. Muga, today's proverb.
When a once beautiful piece of cloth turns to rags, no one remembers that it was woven by Ukwe master weavers. An Igbo proverb.
Sounds like an advert.
Doesn't it just?
Sounds like an advert for Ukwe master weavers.
Yes, yes.
When a once beautiful rag. Go ahead.
Not rag.
When a once
cloth.
Cloth.
The cloth, important, not the rag. The rag comes after.
That's not a beautiful
the
rag.
Rag before and then it metamorphoses into a cloth. This isn't a butterfly situation, Chief. Okay? Cloth, woven, beautiful, ages, it becomes rag. And when it becomes rag,
you forget.
People forget that this thing was actually woven by people who were unique experts in this particular art.
Right.
Yes. The beauty is forgotten.
I think I'll make a proposal and take it to Betty Textiles in Nakuru for an advert like this.
Ka-chang. Okay. Ka-chang. Really?
So let's talk about security. There's been all this brouhaha lately about the qualification for police officers. What's this all about?
Well, I think the opinion that I think arrested the attention of the nation was what was reported as having been said by a high-ranking police official, a gentleman by the name, I think is Charles Owino is his name. And I'm going to say it was his opinion. And he gave his opinion and understood it. But I think it goes back to the requirements, the basic requirements that someone must have when they aspire to actually provide security for the country by way of employment and become, say, a police officer as we normally refer to them. Okay? It also goes back to the question of what we need police officers for. Put it very simply, to ensure there is security for all. So, if you look at the importance that we give security, then the next question that we ask is, what importance then do we give for the basic requirements of people who are supposed to provide this service? And if we're to go by what was reported as coming from this gentleman who is a high-ranking police officer, he placed the academic qualifications that are required at a rather low standard. Rather low. So essentially, one can actually juxtapose and come to the conclusion that you don't expect those with whom you trust with the security to be very well educated. You don't demand a lot from them. And yet, people from whom we require, for instance, educational security, as in teachers, some of them meet a similar fate. The standards required are not as high as they would. Take another cadre of people, doctors. Now, this group of people, we require the highest possible academic requirements for you to become a doctor. So it begs the question, if you place the lives of your citizens in the hands of these people, because you do the same for the teachers, you do the same for the security, why then don't you have the same standards for them? Why don't you ask that those who aspire to these positions must be the most highly academically qualified? Why don't you have the same standards? Why do you have lower standards for the others? And yet you expect a similar output. Why? It's a question I would ask.
If you look at it that way, so let's compare the police service with the defense. Yep. And this is the defense forces.
Yes.
What is the qualification required to become a soldier? And what's the qualification required to become a cadet?
To begin with, you start off by you must be a citizen of that country.
Right.
And there are other requirements that follow.
Tall,
yes, exactly.
Full set of teeth.
Teeth, exactly, exactly, yes. Preferably your own. Now,
at least for the day.
However, when you look at the requirements, the question you ask is pertinent. The difference between a cadet. Now, there's what you call a regular police person or a regular military person. They are not officers. When you then get to the level of officers, they require you to have a higher standard.
Yes.
Meaning you're the person who's supposed to lead these other regular officers.
You're a decision maker.
You are. And you are in charge of people. But then you see, the fundamental difference is that the armed forces are not civilian. They are set aside. They're in barracks. We hardly interact with them. They are people who go about their business because their work is in defense of the country.
Yes.
The police, unfortunately, are civilian. They deal with civilian lives on a daily basis.
They're maintaining law and order. They are
on a daily basis.
They're doing some interpretation of the law.
My friend, they are also given responsibilities on a daily basis that require more than just that basic understanding that was represented by the views that one Charles Owino presented.
It requires some critical thinking.
It requires
at the very least.
A heck of a lot.
It does. But you know what he was saying, essentially? Now, if I'm going to quote what he said specifically on this day in question, he has come out to explain why the service prefers to employ officers who attained grade C plain or below. According to him, officers who attained grade C plus and above come to the service with unrealistic demands and are unlikely to work as hard as their counterparts with lesser grades.
That is
because those who have attained a higher grade have ambitions. They want to become something greater in the future.
I dare say
it would give the impression that those who have lower grades don't have so much in terms of ambition, according to this statement.
If he was quoted correctly, then I dare say that he has a very narrow understanding of what the functions of the police force are.
And I go on to say, continuing with this quote, we have a challenge when we employ every policeman with grade C and above. They go back to school, they get their degrees, they come back and tell you, now, we don't want to work at this level. For every 9 police officers, we may only have 1 corporal and 1 inspector. So you cannot promote everyone to those levels.
Those ranks.
And anybody who comes with grades above that is going to have ambition, and they're going to want to come up and climb up the service ladder.
There is more to it than just what he's saying. That he's talking about an outcome. But let us look at the police force for what it has been. For the longest time, it required, as he correctly states, basic minimum educational requirements. So, given time, when people rise to the top, they will still have those basic minimums. A few may have aspired to acquire greater academic education, but many of them didn't need it. It's not what determined that you're promoted. And what does that mean? It then means that if you have a top-heavy cadre of people who don't aspire to academic qualifications, anyone coming with academic qualifications will have a problem.
Becomes a threat.
You will have a serious problem on your hands.
I can understand what he's saying, by the way, if you just listen to the message and ignore the messenger. He's raising the issue of, look at it in the context of, we have very many more people who now have a grade above C. We have very many more people who now have even gone ahead to get a college diploma or a university degree, and they're looking for jobs. And the available jobs are everywhere. Police, military, everywhere.
Prisons.
So the people who had the qualification to go to university, but they didn't go to university for one reason or the other, they could not afford the school fees and all, they got into the police service, and then using their police circle, using their salaries, they are able then to go into parallel degree programs. They get the degree, they come back with that paper and say, you know what, now I have this qualification, and I have seen whenever there's somebody who comes up with a higher qualification, they move a grade up, or a job group up. So that is happening. Now, you get to a point where you have thousands of people who are graduating every year. They are getting degrees and they're police officers, and they're all presenting this to the HR department. What happens? How many people are we going to promote and make corporals?
But Eric, it isn't just
it
isn't just the academic qualification that gets you promoted. Surely, I'm sure there are other conditions that they look at. I mean, the military handles this thing fairly well. The military accommodates. If you look at the way they go about it, they accommodate that education, and somebody can rise from being a regular askari and become an officer. They have a system. as do the police service. Look, just because one hasn't aspired to ensure that thing is far more competitive than it actually is, doesn't mean that we then accept that the low threshold that has been required is the norm. It shouldn't be, given the task that police officers
perform.
It is, the requirements are heavy.
Let's bring in somebody to help us have this conversation. Tabitha Mwangi is a security researcher and consultant, and she studies matters of security, matters of police, and she joins us now on the line. Tabitha, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
Very well, thank you. Good morning.
Hello.
Thank you very much for joining us, Tabitha. You've heard our conversation and what we want to discuss today, and this is all about, the qualifications for a police officer, just starting from the basics. From what City is saying, look, a police officer deals with civilians, with citizens on a daily basis. A police officer is maintaining law and order. That means a police officer needs to understand basic law. That means a police officer needs to be trained and be able to grasp the basic law and to make that decision on the go, whether somebody is actually breaking the law or not. Is the qualification for a D sufficient?
I don't think I'd look at it from the perspective of the D or whichever other grade, because I think it's not very fair to judge someone's future based on exams that they did over a month, having studied for more than, if you think of 844, for about 14 years, where you go for high school, primary school, and the foundational courses at nursery level. And so I think the KCSE requirement, as much as it's important, should not be used to label people for life, because at 16, 17, 18, when most people do these exams, you're still young, you're still sometimes not sure what you want to do with your life. And the fact that sometimes people may not do well in class but then can do other things doesn't mean that they should be hindered from pursuing their dreams. Yet, at the same time, it's very important that we emphasize on excellence, because it's important to support learners to get as high grades as possible, so that by the time they're leaving school, they are in a good position to serve the society and build the nation. When it comes to the work that policemen do, policemen are essentially meant to be maintaining law and order, as you've said. And the fact that they have to interact with civilians on a daily basis and respond to, very different issues that happen in society, it means they need very essential skills that help them know how to live with people and how to support the people that they're living with. So, for instance, if there is a fire, then the policeman might go in there to probably collect evidence about what happened, to help rescue people, and all sorts of things. Like, they are invited or called upon to help deal with different issues. And so if we can train them with as much skills as possible that are interdisciplinary, then they are able to effectively do their work. That way, they will be able to know when they're violating human rights of people. They will know when they're breaking the law themselves. They will have the basic humane principles such as empathy, basic politeness, and things that sometimes could be lacking if someone has not gone through some form of training. And I'm not saying that education is what makes you a polite person, makes you empathetic, but then going through an academic course prepares you to know how to conduct yourself in a manner that is socially acceptable. So I think saying that we want policemen with lower grades because if they have higher grades they're going to be too ambitious, I think for me that's misleading the country, because we need policemen who understand their work, who understand the emerging trends in peace and security issues, in law enforcement issues. And so if we only have people that we think are not ambitious enough, not willing to learn because we can pay them little money, then we're not going to be doing ourselves any justice as a country. Yeah.
But have we not heard conversations about an examination system such as the one that we've had and we still have that actually do not do justice to someone's capacity and ability? I mean, there are people who examine badly. They may have the knowledge, but when you bring them to an exam, they panic, they don't seem to do well.
Yep.
This has been evidenced by people who at a certain level in the educational ladder climbing didn't do well, but given an opportunity, excelled as they grew older. They're what we call in education late bloomers. They may not necessarily excel at a certain level, but later on they do. And then there is also the discussion around overrating the importance of university education. I mean, it is assumed that when people acquire university education, they then acquire other attributes that are superior to those who didn't. And I don't know whether there is evidence to prove this particular statement, that a university degree or qualification makes somebody a better human being.
I don't think having a degree makes you a better human being compared to other people. And that's why I didn't use the word university per se. I say academic studies, because there's people who do certificates, diplomas, and others just learn through experience. I think we need to move away from just grading people on pen and paper, like in terms of, did you get this question right? Or are you able to apply, and move to, are you able to apply what you've learned in class to real life situations? That way you will not have people misusing their power, because then they will realize that they have a responsibility to use their power and office mandate to do the right thing. Because we have a lot of cases of people who went to university and even have PhDs, but are just as horrible human beings as, people that are
the worst of the lot. But realistically, when you talk about, a recruitment exercise, like now, let's say police are going to conduct a recruitment exercise around the country, there've got to be some basics. And one of the basics that they're saying is at least go through secondary education. Go through basic education from kindergarten up to secondary level. Have sat that exam. And that's why they even lower the grade and say, anybody, if you got an A all the way to, is it a D? You can come and apply. So it's not that they're saying that we want only those people who have a D and below. No, they actually say it's up to the level of D. You can come and apply. And that if you just think about it practically, they're basically saying what we want is somebody who has had that basic education and not locking out anybody. And then now beyond that, they start now, you're taken through Kiganjo, and there's the training that you'll go through. So if you think about it, it's not that the police is reserved for the people with a D. If you have an A and you want to become a cop, go right ahead and apply.
And I think that's the kind of culture we need to embrace as a country, for people to know that you don't get into law enforcement as a means of last resort when everything else has failed, because then that means we will have people that are not doing it because they're passionate about what they're doing. They'll only be doing it for the money. And we've had people bribing their way in and then having to bribe their money back because they didn't get in the right way. And I think it's important that we move from that kind of mindset to one of service, to one of passion, to one of wanting to develop your country using your skills.
How can you flip that, though? Because we have examples, definitely of other countries whereby it is something that people aspire to do, to aspire to serve and protect, and also realizing that you need a certain level of education to get there. And here we are having said that the way it has been all this time is that, all right, if you are not able to succeed in this area, then go ahead and join the police force. How can you flip the script? How then is it possible to flip it and say, you know what, actually, it should be something that people aspire to be and do, and not necessarily say, because then if you want to look at it from the other side, then some of these sentiments then are unfortunate if they come out this way, that, all right, we don't want anybody who has ambition to come and join the police force, essentially, because we don't have enough space at the top. For everybody who has ambition, that means you're going to want to rise. And we don't have enough space for everybody there. But how can we flip it so that at whatever level you are, joining the police force, you realize that you are in a critical space whereas the country is concerned. And the truth of the matter is that you want the best in this service. You want the best. As a country, as a people, you actually do want the best in this service. You don't want anybody void of ambition or lacking in desire to perform well. So how do we flip that narrative?
There's been a lot of reforms that have been introduced to try improve the image of the police. I think now more than ever we have a few measures that have been put in place to ensure that police can also be held accountable. So we have institutions such as IPOA and other ways of holding policemen accountable, all in an effort to try bridge the gap between the state and the community, because policemen are often perceived as acting on behalf of the state. And so we need to move that further and humanize them and show people in society that, you know what, your brother or your sister, your son or your father could be a policeman, and they play such an important role that benefits everyone. And if we're able to do that, then people will be more willing and able to provide information to police. People will be more supportive of police, and even the police themselves will feel appreciated, because there's nothing as bad as doing a job where you don't feel valued, you don't feel appreciated. So helping to bridge this gap is very important, so that policemen know that they are leading. They're not just doing work for the sake of it. They are leading the societies in which they work in towards getting potential solutions for issues that could be affecting them. The other thing that will be very important is for us as a country to remember the history of policing in Kenya comes from the colonial system. And as we advance as an independent state, have we kept certain attributes in the policing structure that were there during the colonial times? If we have, what do we need to do to remove those things and put in the values and the cultures that represent us as an independent people? That way we will not see the civilian as an enemy, as has often been said about how some of the police training sort of shifts police mindset to view the citizen as an enemy. So if we can think of the kind of culture that we want to have in the policing, and as we have these reforms, ensure that those values are public and people are able to point out when police do the right thing, we humanize them, we share stories of policemen doing good things. As we've seen in the past, I'm sure you've seen on social media photos of policemen helping motorists stranded in traffic.
Yep.
There was pushing a car. There was one who was teaching a school where there were no teachers. So we have all these stories, but because the tendency is more often than not to report negative issues, we need to start sharing those good stories, so that when I see a cop in CBD, I don't feel scared. I don't think, oh my goodness, do I have my mask on properly or not? But I will want to wear my mask properly, not because I'm scared of the police, but because I know the police is working for me. The police is there to remind me when I go against the law and to make sure that I am protected. That way we will not have this tension between societies and police.
But let me ask this question, if I may. You see, we look at what you've just said is, it's like we inverse the role of the policeman. Instead of being someone who we feel is there to work on our behalf, it's like we've developed an attitude where we feel this is someone who is there to threaten our lives. But this hasn't always been the case. I mean,
I think one of the...
Yes, please go ahead. Go ahead, please.
It's how the media, and I'm not just saying the media, it's how policemen have been portrayed. You know, when a child is crying because they don't want to eat their food, you tell them, you know, finish your food or I call the police for you. So we instill that fear from when people are really young, and then during your teenage and early youth years, of course, chances of you getting into...
So essentially...
It didn't come from nowhere. I always say that there's no smoke without fire, and you know, a rumor that has gone about, or even a stereotype that has been established, has an element of truth. There is something that happened and was widely practiced that gave people that belief. And so it is not, somebody didn't just jump out of the blue and say that the police behave in a certain manner. It must have happened over time. It was widely practiced for people then to imbibe this belief. So it is something that happened, which is why I was saying you need to overturn the narrative from the very beginning and say, where did this all start from?
I mean, I'm laughing because I'm thinking of a friend of mine who anecdotally was telling me in humor, where there's some communities where the lullaby they sing to a child who is crying that if they behave, they'll be allowed to join the army. Okay? And become an askari. Now, I said he was being humorous about it. But it's because the perception is that joining the army was a source of employment and an honorable thing to be.
Yes.
Just like at a certain point in history in this country, being a teacher was a wonderful thing and teachers were held in high esteem. Then a time came about when teachers were no longer held in high esteem and the reporting was always negative, and one forgot that even as the negative reports, which were a small portion of the actual report, students were being churned out of the education system well and teachers were doing their job. By the same token, the bulk of the policemen actually do what they're supposed to do. But then you have one or two who represent them negatively, and suddenly that is the predominant narrative, that policemen are bad. And yet, if they were as bad as we actually supposedly think they are, this country wouldn't be exactly where it is. Not really. Because they actually do get to do their jobs, and that's why there is some form of law and order that you can speak of. We aren't at a state where there's absolute chaos. We're not there. But the point we were trying to make earlier on, rather, the point I'm harping on is, when you require so much of a certain cadre of people, a certain group of people, should you then not also equip them to ensure that the jobs that you require of them, they are able to carry out because they have been sufficiently provided for? And I'm saying that the police force are not adequately provided for. That's the point I'm trying to make. I don't think they are. There was a time in this country when you...
And by providing for, you mean...
Do they have sufficient vehicles to carry them back and forth?
Right.
Are the vehicles in good order? Do they live in the sort of houses that one feels they would be comfortable in?
Are they remunerated?
Are they remunerated adequately so that they can actually live, they and their families? For the longest time, our policemen lived in places that were slightly better than pigsties.
Yeah.
Just slightly.
Yes. And so you expect such a person who lives in a house with his family where the rooms are demarcated by just one partition, a thin sheet, a see-through sheet. And you expect this person to walk out every day out of that place to go and look after the lives of people. Every single day.
To be motivated.
And this is the motivation you give them. You see them walking in the rain, you don't see them with raincoats. You see them stopping in traffic. I mean...
Which could explain why then, maybe some people may look at it and think, you see, if I get somebody who did not have any other hope and I've provided for them this particular job, they will be at least okay to live in these conditions, to work in these conditions, because this is their chance at least having a job. If I have somebody else who comes in and they're thinking, you know what, I really passed, I should have gone to university, I want to go to university, I want to live better, then you have issues.
You do.
Because that group of people now starts coming to tell you, you know what, by the way, this housing you're giving me is not my portion.
Let me flip it for you. If you remember when civil servants, whether you work for paracetamol, you had houses. Let's say policemen who attached some of these paracetamol lived in such good houses.
Yes.
If you said that was the standard and somebody came in or was accepted with them, that minimum requirement oversee, all right? They would aspire because they would know that the people who were taken in with me had better grades. So I'd better work harder and present myself better. But when the bar is a low standard, then the aspiration is equally low. There is no motivation to actually rise to the top. Why should you? When you know very well that higher requirement will be rewarded by you never getting a promotion, by you being sat on, by you ensuring that nothing happens in your life. All I'm saying is, if you want people to aspire for something that is good, then please, you need to have a commensurate reward system that, apart from the education, tells them or communicates to them that, you know, folks, if this is the path you follow, this is where you will end up. But ours is the complete opposite. The same applies to people who aspire to the priesthood for the longest time. All you required perhaps was to be alive. You didn't really need to pass anything. And you would be accepted in some Bible college where you're churned out and you can barely read and you're supposed to be leading the flock. A very important role.
As a daughter of a former reverend.
Oh, voila.
My government job.
I am aware I'm being facetious, but I think you get my point.
And I think it's important to encourage young people to want to be ambitious, to want to excel in their work, regardless of what grade they scored, because I think it's life is learning is a lifelong journey. You can never know too much. And so if we set up a culture where policemen feel like they can't aspire to go to the next level, then we're going to lose a generation of people that will have made a difference to this country's development. Because if you think of the work that policemen do and the role that they play such an important role that we need to equip them with not only the physical things like you mentioned, the cars, the housing, but also the skills to know, because criminals and all these other bad people that they are on the lookout for are not left behind by trends, by emerging technologies and other developments that's happening. And so if we have policemen that are just sitting in the dark, then, we're going to find ourselves in the situation that you mentioned of total chaos, where we're not safe, we're not sure who's policing, we're not sure what policing is like, and nobody feels safe. And that's a recipe for disaster, because the state has a duty to provide us with security when we pay taxes.
In fact, you could argue that given the way we treat our police force, they are doing an excellent job. Given the resources that they actually have, let me call it the minimum resources that they have. Look, if you look at the history of policing, there was a time in this country when the government supplied the police service with some vehicle that was supposed to be cost effective. Those vehicles, I think the top speed was probably 10 kilometers an hour. You could actually run faster than that car. So you actually wondered, now, these vehicles that they have given these policemen...
The Mahindra got
yes, exactly.
bad
what on earth were people supposed to do with this vehicle?
Very fast.
A bicycle could move faster than that vehicle.
Come on, people. Let's take a break. At 27 minutes to 10 o'clock, we are having a conversation about police and policing in the country and the qualifications for a police officer. When we come out of this break, we'll be asking Tabitha, and we'll also be asking you to call in and tell us, should we then raise the minimum requirement for police officer? So that we are ensuring that we're going with the trends and everything else, in addition to everything else. Because that's the main issue here. The conversation in the last 1 week on social media has been about this D, right? Is the D enough for a police officer?
They want the D.
Okay. Let's take a break. We'll be back shortly. Good morning.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life. 24/7, around the world, non-stop. This is SpiceFM. Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah!
You're listening to Spice FM.
Sugar and spice and everything nice, just the way you like it.
The Spice Drive.
Did you have a great day? I hope you did. I intend to make it better from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. I'm going to be taking you home nice and chill. Everyone is welcome aboard. The hashtag is Spice Drive, and of course, Spice FMK.
The weather with Spice
All
FM.
right, sun's coming out in Nairobi. We'll see highs of 26 today and lows of 17. Nyeri is cloudy at 18, highs of 25, coming down to lows of 15. For 14 will be the low in Nakuru. It's partly sunny at 19. Mostly cloudy conditions in Eldoret at 20, going to highs of 25 today and lows of 14. 30 will be the high in Kisumu, where it's partly sunny at 25. It's also partly sunny at 25 in Kakamega, highs of 31 and lows of 16. Mombasa at 30 is going to be warm today, highs of 33, and it's mirrored in Malindi. Coming down to lows of 27. Rain showers in Kampala at 22, highs of 25 and lows of 19. We're seeing mostly sunny conditions at 29 in Dar es Salaam, highs of 32 and lows of 26. 14 the low in Johannesburg today. It's cloudy right now at 17. Light rain in Lagos at 27, highs of 30 and lows of 27. Kinshasa is sunny at 23. It'll go to highs of 32 today. Looking out east into Beijing, it's sunny at 19, highs of 18 and lows of 3. Mostly cloudy conditions in Paris at 3. The highs will be 9 and lows of 5. Cloudy conditions at 7 in London, highs of 13 and lows of 6. And into Monday morning, New York is clear at 6, highs of 14 and lows of 3.
Spice up your life.
Okay,
Traffic.
so need to correct that. That issue of the train having stalled at some point towards Masenya, that's not the issue. It was yesterday, but today train is up and ready. No issues today, so that's good news, I think. Yes, that was yesterday, not today. Yesterday, the train flowing smoothly. Madaraka Express is just fine. We still have some traffic on Mombasa Road today. It is slow in some parts every now and then, but then it picks up without too much of an issue. Accident on Thuki Bridge this morning. To find out details of that, but it's quite some. Lorry has overturned quite a lot of human traffic on the road now and trying to sort that particular issue out. Within the city of Nairobi, though, not too much in terms of traffic, looking a lot better coming off Thika Road and into the CBD. Uhuru Highway moving slowly. Not a bumper-to-bumper situation, but it seems to be all right. Let us know through the morning where you might get stuck or if the traffic situation gets better. SpiceFM KE on Twitter, text 40127.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right.
23 minutes to 10
94.
o'clock. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. The situation room ought to be the minimum grade required for one to be recruited into the Kenya Police Service. That is the conversation we're having. In the room is CT Muga Nduoko Eric Latif, and joining us on the line is security researcher and consultant Tabitha Mwangi. That minimum requirement, and we're seeing very many people commenting on social media, somebody saying minimum should be D- and below. So below, now minimum.
That individual
and below, it's an F
they must have their reasons, but why D- and below? I would actually add something to. Are there more comments that are?
Yes.
Why don't we read them?
Okay,
Yes.
there's one I can't read, but anyway, basic speaking and writing, running and shooting. That's according to Bethwell. Right, okay. Jonathan says, in the near future, the people holding these ranks, which require certain qualifications, will be retiring, and their gaps will automatically need to be filled. If we don't have officers seeking such qualifications, who will take their places? And it's mediocre, and that needs to actually be looked at. Properly aligned teeth, I guess, is what Abraham says. Charles Owino inclined towards that line of thought just recently. He claimed that C- and below were best. I think people should be allowed to choose careers they want, even if this means joining the security units with high academic qualifications, which I think makes sense. Right, so that's what we see there. Basically, that folks are saying.
You don't do.
Yes.
There's this reality we have in this country, okay? We worship academic qualifications, okay?
Yes.
So if you enter a profession that doesn't require high academic qualifications, you are going to be subjected to derision, all right? And even those who enter know this because they're in this society and they understand. You know what we're telling people? That when you can't qualify for a university course or you are not able to attain grades that are required, this is what you do. So you are starting off someone with a mindset that they are the wretched of that particular earth.
Exactly. And
Okay?
that's what I'm saying needs to actually be changed. City.
Yes.
Whereas the environment should be, and maybe you can jump in at some point, Teresa, but this is what I'm saying, is that at that point where you see that those who did not qualify, you're throwing them and lumping them into this particular basket, saying that service as a whole, which if you look at it properly, requires some of the most highly educated people, because your assumption is that education brings about a level of critical thinking that is required in this job of policing, which should be the case, right? But you're saying that, okay, we're going to dump you here and then you can just go ahead and get by with doing that job, whereby the inverse should be. And that the reason why this person did not pass, is it being looked at? The reason why this person then did not qualify, is that being looked at? Is there something that is being created where these individuals who did not do so well then can go on ahead and do something worthwhile, number one, or be trained further if it is required? So here you are with a force that it is absolutely necessary that you should have the creme de la creme of people in that society, working in this particular field or in this particular service, what you're saying is, okay, if you didn't pass, you can come ahead and try your hand at this. What do you expect to happen?
And then we add insults to injury, remuneration.
Yeah,
okay?
Then you pay them nothing.
You're paid a paltry sum and you're supposed to do everything with that amount of money.
Commensurate with your D minus.
Now, you see, but beyond the D minus, you go for training. Now, this is where I wanted to actually
for 6 months.
That is the, Eric, nail on the head. I am saying that even if someone starts with that disadvantage, somebody may have the aptitude, but for some reason or the other, they may not have done well.
Yeah.
Okay? So, second chance opportunity, when you are taken in, the training should not be 6 months. The training should be a minimum of 2 years. So by the time you actually leave that college, my friend, certain things have been inculcated in you and you know them well. So, something taught in 6 months, that thing can rub off very quickly. It can be eradicated, it can be washed away very, very, very quickly. Have you ever encountered a young police person who has, you can see this one is fresh from the mint, okay? They are polite, they are pleasant. They actually shock you. They salute, they greet you, they ask you how you are, and you're in shock.
They're
you're wondering,
grateful
okay,
they have a
what
job.
does this person want? Then they even ask, can I please check this? Can I please do the other? So it tells you they are trained. And I'm saying train them for longer. So that you actually imbue in them and introduce a new culture. 6 months doesn't cut it.
Tabitha.
And to add what you say, train them for longer and with relevant information, because the country is changing in response to emerging technology, emerging new ways of doing things. And so we need our police to be able to deal with these things, because they cannot detect and deter criminals who are more advanced than they are. So we need to give them the right information. And so we need to not only train them for that period when they're in school, but to also encourage them to continue learning even when they're working, so that they're able to apply the theory learned in class with the practical that they're interacting with every day. So that we have a system where they don't only do exams and move on from that, but then they continue learning, not only for the sake of getting papers and getting more money, but because we know that that knowledge is helping them become more effective in their work. And as you mentioned, once they get into the police training, and even for even the army, once they go to school, before they start their work, they get skills that help them sort of introduce them to what the field will be like. Because given all the changes that happen, we can never say that they're equipped enough to do their work effectively. And so by the time they're finishing, whether you got in there with a B+ or with a D+ or with a, the person who said just the dental formula is enough, but then you have a bit more information that you can use to do your work. And we need to encourage people to study not only for money, but for their own self-development, so that they're able to improve the way they conduct themselves in their societies, which will translate to national transformation. Because if I am doing the right thing, if I am upholding the values that we need to uphold as a society, and everyone else around me is doing that, then we move forward as a country, as opposed to having people feel like because I didn't do well in my high school exam, then I am doomed and I can only earn X amount of money. Yet when you go to the supermarket, you're not sold stuff based on how much you got for. If only that was the case, then nobody would work hard, because you'd go to the D shelf and get your unga at 20 shillings, while the A people get higher cost. So we need to make it equitable and transform lives of Kenyans, because we work so hard and we have the potential to be one of the greatest countries in this region, if not the greatest.
As it stands right now, and the kind of police training, okay, of course, there is the first training that you go to Kiganjo. As you're introduced, you're recruited into the training, you come out as a constable. For you to rise, you keep going for refresher courses. For example, there's a corporal course and all, right?
Yes.
You even go into
even officers course.
Officer and even traffic, you get your training.
Yes.
But those first initial 6 months, aside from being regimented into knowing Afande and Ndiosa and waking up at this time and polishing your shoes, what else are they trained on? Okay, well, and loading a gun and firing and running around and carrying that whole thing for 7 kilometers. What else? What other training happens in the first 6 months in Kiganjo?
You have behavioral understanding to know how to study people. which will help them if they're doing any investigations, if they get to a scene of crime, to know what is amiss, how is this person behaving vis-a-vis what they're saying. Then we also have the issue of values, because they have to uphold certain values that reflect what the police service should be, because we moved from police force to police service. And we also have critical thinking skills to be able to question the information you get, to be able to understand when people are trying to mislead you, and to be able to make independent decisions based on the evidence that you have at the time.
Yep.
And so in a way, it somewhat tries to be holistic, but can still be improved on. And the emphasis should not just be on the grade that they get when they're finishing, but it should be on the values, the discipline that the person has. So we're not only building book smart people, but people who are more knowledgeable beyond what they can write down with pen and paper, but how they relate with other people, how they respond, the attitude that they have when they're serving people.
Yeah.
That way we'll be able to move forward as a country.
Let's go to the phone
also-
lines.
Okay.
We have someone on the phone lines, and this man is called Gekonyo in Nakuru. Good morning, Gekonyo.
Oh, this is Zachary, the same Zachary, yeah?
I think Eric knew it was you, Zachary, but he decided.
I think you have got a new receptionist. But he is good now.
Yes.
First of all, how is everyone there?
Very well,
We are very well, thank you.
And I have not seen Japoji's signpost showing that this is his bomber, and he is a Japoji, a Jakwatha, and a graduate also, okay?
It is going through procurement. You know, it's,
And let him know that in my
Japonj-
second drive, I want to be, just even if it is for a week, I want to be a Ruo, okay?
Something to aspire to.
Now, very quickly, because time is not on our side.
Right.
Let me say this, yeah? I give you an example. Look at the DCI's updates on social media.
Right. The latest ones.
The guy who writes those updates is actually a guy you would want to associate with. He writes impeccable English, top-notch English, okay? And this brings us closer. It brings us closer to the police force, okay? That they are knowledgeable. They are our brothers. They are our sisters, our mothers, you see? And, okay, even though I'm not saying that the D plus guys should not be taken into the police force, okay? But once they are there, they can be given a chance to advance their learning. Because whether you like it or not, Mr. Eric, even the Mama Boga will be forced by circumstances, the changing technology, as our studio guest has illustrated, that you need to have some form of literacy, especially in technology, okay?
Yes.
Because how are you going to know that to transact on your phone if you're not able to read, okay? How are you going to differentiate between the guys calling you at committee telling you that you have won $1 million shillings and asking for your ID and your particulars, okay? And but let me say this: a literate policeman or a security person is a person whose discretion is also high. His reasoning capacity is also high. Therefore, I kind of say that let them up the grades as they encourage the already ones who have already been taken with D pluses and D minuses. Okay.
Yeah.
To go for more training and learning. And you guys have a nice day.
You too, Zachary. Victor in Nakuru. Good morning.
Morning and hi, Eric.
Very good.
Eric and Do, how are you guys doing?
We're very well, thank you.
Today, I've been driving on my way to Nairobi. I've been listening to you guys all through, but I love this issue of the security issue. And I'm a bit concerned. When we look at the police and their qualifications, what exactly are we complaining about? Are we complaining that they're not performing well, or should they perform better? Or is it an issue of just the qualifications?
If we term it as complaints, we're complaining about everything.
But I think we need to look at it as what makes them not perform, because I don't think it's really education or qualifications. Personally, I think it's the system. I think we have refused to deal with issues that would empower them and give them the moral authority as individuals in their respective positions as police officers. Because when I am on the road, I know I'm on the wrong, but the first thing I would want to do is give him 100 shillings or 200 shillings for him to let me go. Well, it is not that he's not educated for him to accept my bribe. It is a circumstance that we have put them through that makes them think, all right, I actually slept hungry last night. So this 200 will go a long way in sorting my breakfast, you know? So it's not really a qualification issue. Because even if I got a fully qualified individual to run as an inspector, while his children are out of school due to school fees, it is a fact. On the road, he will actually take the 1,000 shillings.
We'll still go for it.
Sure.
Because he thinks if I get 3 or 4 people who will give me 1,000 each, my kids will go back to school.
So it's what CT was saying. It's about how we empower the officer, how we remunerating, how we treat the officers.
Agreed. And secondly, there is over and above the officers, the Kenyan citizenry. Because even ourselves, we have our own difficulties outside here that I would actually look at 20,000 shillings fine of, having been, on the wrong on the road against the 1,000 shillings. I don't have the 20,000. That means I'll go for 3 months.
Yep.
So I would rather give the 1,000 and push that this guy accepts 1,000 or 2,000 because I don't have 20,000. So we have a whole thing that we need to look at, not necessarily just the qualification.
Yeah.
Because I think we have individuals who are just cut for the police force. And they do a good job, but the challenges are difficult to meet on the road.
Thank you very much, Victor.
Yeah. All right.
Anthony in Mombasa.
Morning. How are you?
Good
Very
morning.
How is the station room?
Good, thank you.
First of all, you've gone out of air in Mombasa as of this minute.
This exact minute.
As of this minute we are talking.
Okay.
You are out of air. We cannot hear you in Mombasa.
Juma, is that because of the satellite issue? Yeah, I remember.
What happened.
Things,
just a few minutes ago, just when the last
things
caller was
happen,
talking.
Anthony. So what happens is around this time of the year, satellite communication with Earth is interfered with.
Okay.
At around, momentarily. This is going to be for about 5 minutes. It's called sun outage.
Okay.
Now, sisi ni dunia.
Yeah, to the situation room now.
Right.
I tend to slightly differ with the previous caller. Because when it comes to remuneration and everything, they are also government officers. They are also people who are being paid small money, yet they are not corrupt. There are drivers who are paid 20,000 per month. They don't steal diesel from their bosses, their cars, or from their workplaces. They don't go stealing. They manage what they have. And basically, our system of education, when you reach the Form 4, whatever you've been taught in school, there's this tendency of, it's like it declares you who you'll be in future, or where you are heading to, of which I say no. There are guys who are performers when we were in high school, and they went even to university, and they are useless people in life. And there are those guys, yes, they are there.
Useless.
They've gone even up to university. Yes.
Useless is a rather strong word, wouldn't you say?
Yes, because when you've gone all that way, then you're given an office, a simple office that you cannot manage, you become a useless person, like Kebak used to say. And there are those people who got even D, E, and they went to tertiary education centers, and they were given the right, they took the right course, what they want to do in life, and they've become good. They've done well with their lives. They've gone very far with their lives. So basically, what you learn in school does not directly affect what you'll be in future. What you learn after school, what you learn in colleges, what the police learn when they go. That's what you are saying. If they could be given maybe 2 years training, maybe it could change them.
Okay.
And then they come out of this college, they go to work, the system they fight there. when you go out in the field, it is open knowledge, it is known. These officers raise money, that money flows up to their bosses. And if you don't give your percentage, you will not be posted in a lucrative area.
It's
you
a
might
system
even be
issue as
posted.
well.
Yeah, so the system is the problem.
Asante, Anthony.
What
Thank you
they
very
find
much.
when they get there is the problem.
Thank you. Have a lovely day in Mombasa. We'll be back on air shortly.
Thank you.
Asante. So, Tabitha, listening to all those comments, and as we come to the conclusion of the conversation, there's the matter of how we treat not just employing the officers, but there's also how we remunerate them, how we train them, how we do all those things. Being somebody who has researched this area, are the efforts that have been made enough, or are they even pushing us towards getting to that ideal place?
I wouldn't say they are enough because I believe there's room for a lot of improvement. But I do recognize that we've made quite some progress and hope that we can continue doing that. What I will say is that we all have a role to play. The private sector, individuals, the government, we all have a role to play to ensure that our police have the equipment and the skills that they need to do their work. For instance, I'm sure you've seen the initiatives in the Kilimani area where people support police stations, the police station in their neighborhood, and other things in their neighborhood such as schools and what have you. So we all have a role to play, and we need to play that role, knowing that we're doing it for our country and for future generations. And what I'd say is we need to pay the police better. So we need to raise the pay, we need to raise the bar for them, academically and also in terms of expectations, behavior-wise and value-wise. And also we need to ensure that there's continuous learning and bridging of the gap between the police and the communities that they work in.
Asante sana. And we thank you very much for joining us today and for all this conversation that we've been able to have together.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much.
Before you go, listen to today's proverb and let's see if you'll be able to discern this one.
When a once beautiful piece of cloth turns to rags, no one remembers that it was woven by Ukwe master weavers. This is an Igbo proverb. Let me repeat it. When a once beautiful piece of cloth turns to rags, no one remembers that it was woven by Ukwe master weavers.
All right.
So what does it mean then?
You see, every time we talk about the police service and the policemen, you forget of times or the security you enjoy and which you take for granted, which wouldn't actually be there if the police were not there. You forget the many, many, many policemen who actually just do men and women who do exactly what they're supposed to do. But the ones that we point out to are the ones who stand out
as the rags.
Yes. And we forget that the vast majority of the policemen and women actually do what they're supposed to do.
And they went through the master crafters in
Yes.
Kiganjo.
If they didn't, we would not have even what we call a semblance of law and order. We would have a lack of law and complete disorder. But we don't have that. So it means there is something that they actually do, and they do it correctly.
Thank you very much for tuning into the Situation Room today. Join us again tomorrow, 6 a.m. to 10.